Hello, hello, hello.
This February 9th, 2026 meeting of the Worcester Conservation Commission is now called to order. My name is Diane Fertoni. I'll be chairing this meeting. As part of this meeting, we will be holding hearings under the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and Regulations and the City of Worcester Wetlands Protection Ordinance and Regulations. The commissioners are volunteers who serve to enforce these laws and regulations to protect specific values identified as being important to Massachusetts and the City of Worcester. Commission decisions are based on these laws and regulations and are not arbitrary or based on personal likes or dislikes. It is important to the Commission that these hearings are held in a fair and equitable way for all parties involved. This requires that discussion take place in a civil manner, and every individual in this meeting is treated respectfully. To facilitate this, the hearings take place in the order they are listed on the agenda, which is available by the door and online. First, the applicant will present an overview of the project to the Commission. Next, staff will provide comments on the proposed work. Then the Commission will direct any questions it has to the applicant or staff. After the Commission is done questioning the applicant, the floor will be open to the public. Comments and questions must be directed to the chairperson, not to the applicant or their representative, and they must pertain to the regulations that the Commission oversees. For example, although you might have concerns over the traffic resulting from a particular project, the Conservation Commission does not regulate traffic, so traffic concerns will not be discussed during the meeting. Please note that while new points will be given ample time to present, repetitive comments will be cut short in the interest of having all parties be given an opportunity to speak. We ask that all applicants and members of the public please state their name and city or town of residence for the record. To manage remote participation during our hybrid meetings and prevent disruptions, all participants are automatically blocked from unmuting themselves, turning on their video, or sending chat messages. For remote participants who would like to comment on an item on our agenda, we ask that you use the raise hand feature in Zoom during the discussion on that item. If you are joined by phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. Staff will then call on members of the public one at a time and give them permission to unmute themselves. If you are joined by phone, you will then be able to unmute yourself by pressing *6. Would everyone please introduce themselves?
Eric Flint, Division of Planning and Regulatory Services.
Maddie Vanderboom, Division of Planning and Regulatory Services.
Devin Canton, Commissioner.
Lindsay Nystrom, Commissioner.
Stuart Kirshner, Commissioner.
Thank you. First, are there any requests for continuances, postponements, extensions, or withdrawals?
Yes, we have item number 1, 29 Webster Street. This is a request for leave to withdraw without prejudice. Same thing for item number 5, 569 Millbury Street. That's also a request for leave to withdraw without prejudice. Item number 6, 17 Mill Street. That's a request to continue the public hearing to March 2nd and extend the constructive grant deadline to March 24th. And item number 7, 483 Sunderland Road. That's a request to continue the public hearing to March 2nd and extend the constructive grant deadline to March 24th.
Make a motion to withdraw or postpone items 1, 5, 6, and 7 as described.
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirshner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Tony? Aye. First item, new business, request for determination of applicability, 33 Indian Lake Parkway.
All right, Marcus, you should be able to speak. Please just give us a brief description of the project, so of what you're looking to do. All right, you should be able to speak now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. I apologize. So the goal of the project is to stabilize the dock. It is shifting and crooked because of the far out, the end footers. Yep, as you can see there. It's just not very safe. We want to balance it out. We want to level it off with either a concrete pour footer or buckets in some way that's more stable.
I'm sorry, could you just please identify yourself?
Oh, I'm Marcus Milano. My wife, Maria Vecchio, is the property owner.
How long has the dock been in this condition?
Maybe a year or two. There was some shifting when we purchased the property in 2019, but it didn't get drastic like this until the last couple of years. And for a few seasons, they were not draining the lake, so we weren't able to address it in an off season prior to this current drain in this season.
So what's the plan for, you're saying use concrete posts or buckets. Is the intention to change the support system for the dock, or was it, I guess I thought it was just going to be plank replacement?
We would like to do some surface plank replacement, but we also, we just want to, we need to level it off. The ends, like those two there that we're seeing in the photo, are fairly well anchored in place, but the two at the very far end are shifting and they're not really attached to anything. So we'd like to create a more stable footing to prevent this from, re-shifting in that manner.
Have you given any thought to like an aluminum dock, something that's removable rather than leaving it in all year long?
Not particularly. It wasn't an item that we've really considered that way. Most of the docks, of the neighbors all up and down the lake front are all this wooden style. So it's kind of conformity with the neighbors, but we have not really considered aluminum.
So my concern with replacing any of the footings in the front, that's a more extensive project if you're starting to dig into the lake bed versus just straightening or stiffening the upper portion of the dock.
Okay. I get what you're, right now, under those posts, there's just a couple of rocks. My vision for this, my thought process with this was just to do similar to the buckets where, just to sink something a little more stable to hold it in place so that, when it is resurfaced, we won't have further shifting or, it'd be more resilient to any further shifting in the future.
So when would you propose to do the work? The lake starts to refill mid-March and should be fully filled by the end of March.
It would be before they fill. We have a contractor we've discussed the work with, who we believe will be able to handle it in a fairly short amount of time. It should be, at most like a half a day of work for him. But it would be sometime before they start to refill the lake would be ideal. Hopefully with some melting of the ice so we can get the access there, lift it into place and put it into place in those buckets, those weighted buckets, before they refill.
Has the contractor provided you a proposal already with a scope of work, something that we could look at?
I don't have a hard copy of any written plans of that nature. It's more just that we've discussed it as what could be possible and what he would do to address it.
Staff comments? Sorry, I jumped ahead of you guys.
So I had spoken to the property owner about this a while back, and when we were discussing this, it sounded like we were talking about, putting either like buckets or concrete cylinders under the existing posts, and that's kind of why I had leaned and suggested filing the RDA. I think if there were, if we were talking about excavating into the lake bed and pouring footings, that would probably fall under NOI territory, at least as far as how we've typically permitted docks in the past. So I think I think we need to clarify what the scope of work is before issuing any sort of determination. And I think if the scope of work is, installing footings in the lake bed, then that's typically something that would require an NOI, because that's actual alteration of a resource area.
Yep, understood.
Okay.
Questions or comments from the commissioners?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So I believe there's a special department that regulates docks, and I'm wondering if they have any sort of standard details or recommendations for anchoring something like this?
So I can speak, I guess, a little bit to, are you referring to the, like the Chapter 91 program at the state?
Yep.
Yeah, so that would be a permitting authority for any docks in Great Ponds like Indian Lake or Lake Quinsigamond. I'm not aware of any specific guidance for footing types or anchoring. There might very well be that sort of guidance out there, but it's not something that I've encountered previously, at least. But this is technically any dock in Indian Lake or Lake Quinsig needs a Chapter 91 license. I think there's 2 Chapter 91 licenses for Indian Lake, which shows kind of the level of how heavily that's
Right.
enforced.
Right.
So I do share your concern that if there was anything permanent, I think we would have to look at this a little further. The other concern with just a bucket filled with concrete, the dock is showing its age, and if it's replaced, within the next however many years, we would have to ensure that the buckets aren't just abandoned in place, and then they put something new there. So I'm sure we can have provisions that if this were to go forward and it is renovated or replaced, that everything will need to be replaced in its entirety.
I have something I'd like to add also. Considering at this point, we don't have any plans, I don't, however, my suggestion would be is postpone this to another time, and also suggest that the property owner research aluminum removable docks instead of the repair. I'm not necessarily against what they're proposing. However, without plans, I'm not prepared to vote. So postponement, do a little research on an alternative, and come back with some kind of plans that's required, is what my suggestion is at this point.
They want plans from Mark. They just want a plan, written out something of scope of work.
Do we know so on the picture on the left, we have 4 supports that are, you said, are pretty sturdy. Do you know what those are? Are they embedded in the ground into a concrete footing now?
To my knowledge, it's just the 2 buckets there, and then the closer to the near end of that photo, those are metal posts that seem to be driven into the lake bed. They might have just been hammered in place.
Okay. My first impression by just looking at the photos, it looks like the dock was just sort of put together. And I share the concern about having some drawings so that we really know what's going to be placed there to ensure structural stability, et cetera. Because the last thing you would want is some other type of failure that's not evident in this picture or these photos.
Understood.
Anybody here from the public on the item or online? No? Yeah, my recommendation as well is to postpone until there's a better understanding of the planned work and whether or not an RDA would be sufficient for it. A removable aluminum dock would be relatively easy to approve. Anytime you plan to dig into the lake bed or do something that disturbs the lake bottom, you would have to file for a different type of approval. Do you have any questions for us about the project?
Not at this time.
So I guess one thing we could offer would be for staff to discuss this with you between now and the next meeting to try and figure out exactly what you're looking to do. I think, first we need to hear from you guys specifically what you want to do, but, we can have conversations about what may or may not be approvable through this RDA process prior
Yeah.
to the next meeting, if that's helpful.
That would be greatly appreciated. It shouldn't take more than a day or two to get like a written description of exactly the scope of work that he's thinking to try to restabilize this. So we will, be happy to reach out when we have a copy of that and discuss with, staff so we can, have a thorough information in all parties' hands ahead of time.
Okay, sounds good. So next meeting's on March 2nd. Are you okay with postponing to that date?
Is there any, because I don't know when they start.
Do we, was it mentioned that they begin to refill the lake in the middle of March?
I'm not sure the exact date that they start refilling, but it's supposed to be refilled back to its normal level by April 1st, so it is gradually over March that it gets refilled, yeah.
Okay, that's my main concern, is that if we have to postpone to March 2nd and they've started to raise the lake, then we won't be able to do it anyway, and we'll have to put it off another season. That's my primary concern with that.
I think based on the discussion with the commission tonight, I think it doesn't seem like we're at a point where the commission has enough information about the project to make a formal determination here.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion? If the other commissioners are in line with this, if they decide to go with an aluminum dock, we can possibly make a determination today. If not, then we have to go further. Is that something we can do?
Sorry, this is the owner of the property. I'm his wife. Where we don't have it in the budget to do an aluminum dock, so we have to either fix it the way it is, like prop it up somehow without affecting the land, or it just kind of has to stay that way, but it's just kind of unsafe.
No, I appreciate what you're saying, but we're here to, we have a certain protocol we have to follow, and I appreciate, the practicality of your situation, but we can't go against the protocols we have to follow.
Through you, Madam Chair, is the owner aware of the Chapter 91 requirements for docks at lakes? Is that something that you've looked into?
No.
Okay.
What is it exactly?
I couldn't say. It's a whole other department that's not really.
Yeah, it's through the Chapter 91
reach out to the
program at Mass DEP.
For what?
We
Can we
could
just take the dock down? Can we just take it off? It's just unsafe. It's like, it's not technically even ours, I don't think. And I'm just worried that like it's not on our land. It's just in front of our house. You know what I mean? Is that a possibility, or is that also kind of,
Staff would not have
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
objection
that
to
question. Can you just
Can they just
remove the dock.
remove the dock? It's, I guess the answer would be,
Staff wouldn't have an objection to that.
yeah, no one would have an objection to that, I don't think at all. Frankly, in this condition, it's just as likely it could break apart and become a hazard in the water.
The only thing I would add to that is remove the dock and all fittings attached to it and all supports and everything else, not just the top of it.
Would the applicants want to discuss this between now and the next meeting to think about the options, or is that something you'd want to pursue?
Yeah, we'll have to take the postponement. We have to take it.
Okay,
This-
that's fine.
yeah.
That's fine.
So yeah, we'll happily postpone to the next meeting. That would be March 2nd?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Do we need to vote on the postponement
Yes.
motion?
Motion to postpone?
Second,
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Frattoni? Aye. Right. Next item, old business notice of intent, number 3, lots 1 through 13 Morgan Street and 149 Malden Street, also known as Morgan Estates subdivision.
Good evening. I'm Kate Wilkins from Ecotech, environmental scientist. I'm joined by Chris Keenan, project engineer from Quinn Engineering. And Mike Loring, who's the applicant from Loring Construction, is also on the Zoom. To quickly recap, the proposed project is a subdivision for 13 single-family houses with a cul-de-sac extension off of Morgan Street, as well as stormwater management facilities, paved driveways, grading, and utilities and associated site work. Since the last meeting, we met at the site with Eric and Maddie to evaluate the area between the A series wetland and the CA series isolated wetland, and we confirmed that there was no stream channel connection between the two, or wetland connection or other hydrologic connection. We also received the DEP file number, and they had one comment, which was about the stormwater basin design. They just wanted impervious core on the downstream berm of the stormwater basin. And so we did issue, or Chris issued, a new plan set that has that detail update, and then some other updates that address some comments from the commission and from DEP and DPW. And so one of the comments from staff was whether or not we could shift the work on Lot 10, and that was to see if we could remove the retaining wall, which was proposed at the edge of the 30-foot setback, which we were able to shift it up to as close as it could for the setback lines, and now the retaining wall has been removed, so it's just grading up to that 30-foot setback. And then DPW had some comments. They wanted to see a force main sewer system instead of the gravity system. So that eliminated the utility connections out to Malden Street. And so that was where actually the majority of the work was the closest to the wetland line. And so that eliminates a lot of work in the buffer zone, temporary work in the buffer zone. And so based on that update, the limit of work on the whole property is right about at 30 feet at the closest point to the wetland line. And then the other update that was done is, that was requested by the commission was a phasing plan for the construction. And so the red line there, the red line on the perimeter there is a wire back silt fence. And that's an extra stable erosion control barrier right up to in the portion of the site where the limit of work is adjacent to wetland resource areas. And that's to provide extra protection. And then the color coding is different stabilization, timeline phasing. And then you also see the material stockpile locations with their own associated erosion control barriers around the down gradient perimeter of those. And then there's temporary sediment basins as well during construction. And I believe we have addressed everything at this point that's come up between the commission and DEP. I'll pass it to Chris to jump in and see if I missed anything or if he wants to add any more detail at this point.
Sure, thanks, Kate. Chris Keenan from Quinn Engineering. I know it's been a few meetings since we were here last. I believe one of the major concerns that the commission had last time was, as Kate mentioned, the phasing of the project. We were able to add 2 additional sheets to the plan set to address erosion control and stabilization, both for the roadway phase and then separately for the individual lot construction phase. When we had previously submitted the erosion control plan, the 2 were kind of overlapped into one set of plans, and it was a little difficult to understand where material storage, temporary basins, and erosion controls were going to go for each separate phase of construction. So we provided 2 additional plans, one for the roadway construction and then one for individual lot construction. Each individual lot during the house construction phase will have its own erosion controls, temporary sedimentation basin, and material stockpile location.
Staff comments on the project?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to that update. Like Kate said, we met out at the site to take a look at the wetland boundary, just in one area where we had some questions, and didn't adjust any of the flags or have any disagreement ultimately regarding the wetland boundaries that were delineated. The extra phasing plan is very helpful. I think seeing the basins and stockpile locations on their own sheet, particularly during roadway construction, is really what we were most looking for, just because that's when we're going to have the most area open at once. I think we might want to see some more info about the sizing of the basins, but I think that's something we could easily condition as a condition of approval if the commission were to issue an order of conditions tonight. You know, the elimination of that cross-country connection, like Kate said, also reduces a lot of the work that was closest to the wetlands, so it's nice that that's been eliminated from a wetlands protection standpoint, and also appreciate the shifting of the building on Lot 10 to get that retaining wall out. I think that eases a lot of our concerns about the construction on that side of the site, just given how steep that hill is that leads right down to the wetland area. Yeah, so that's it. I think that's it for staff comments. Happy to answer any questions the commission has.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Can you just talk a little bit more about the phasing with regards to the individual lots? How many would be open at one time, and just sort of the sequencing of that?
Sure. I guess I would start with the roadway construction. For the construction of the roadway, there would be 2 temporary basins proposed, one smaller one near the entrance, or the current termination of Morgan Street, and then a larger basin down the hill closer to the resource areas. And the reasoning for the difference in size is just the amount of tributary area that goes towards each one. You've got more of a downhill gradient towards the existing resource areas, so that basin would be proposed much larger, and then the one up towards Morgan Street would be a smaller basin. We're proposing material storage areas for excavated material and topsoil on both sides of the roadway, so that material can be used for the construction of the lots when those lots are built out. In terms of the lot construction itself, we're proposing erosion controls down the property lines on both sides, also along the roadway once the roadway has been constructed. So the individual lot construction, all sedimentation and runoff will be contained on those individual lots. Again, with their own erosion controls, temporary construction basins, and material storage areas. The number of lots that would be open at any one time, we're happy to have a discussion or have that number set by the commission. You know, if that's 3, 4, 5 lots, whatever the commission is comfortable with.
Yeah, I think just keeping the communication open with staff is, because things may change.
Sure.
So just keeping that dialogue going. So I notice here on your plan, you've got your main construction entrance onto the main road. So as you're doing each lot, presuming you're going to have a separate construction entrance for each one, or maybe one is taking care of 2 or 3 of the lots at a time?
We would propose individual construction entrances for each lot. We don't know that lots would be constructed side by side. You know, it may depend on the buyers as to which lots they're purchasing, so it could be a lot over here or a lot over there.
Right,
So we would propose individual construction entrances for each lot.
Okay, thank you.
So the intention then is to sell these as you go. You're not necessarily building out everything and hoping to sell. You're going to
Correct.
pre-sell.
Yeah. And that kind of keeps the amount of land that's disturbed at a minimum.
Just out of curiosity, I suspect that some of these will be more desirable lots than the others. Do you have a sense of the sequence that they will move in?
Unfortunately, I don't. I know we do have Mike Loring from Loring Enterprises on Zoom. I don't know if he can speak to that or not.
Mr. Loring, you there?
There, you should be able to speak.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, no, we haven't determined which lots we'll build on first at this time.
So the lots that aren't, let's say, sold immediately, that may sit vacant for some period of time, the stabilization plan for those lots, or what are the, I guess, how do you tend to treat them until they're sold?
As soon as the roadway is constructed, the entire area is to be hydroseeded so that we'll have full vegetation stabilized on
And
the
something that's
entire
going to be
area.
maintained, cut, what's the,
I would assume it would be left in a natural state. I don't know if the commission wants to see it maintained more than that.
I frankly don't care that it be maintained more than that, but the people who are buying the houses may have a concern about the condition of the adjacent lots. I don't expect them to be mowed to a lawn. Just didn't know if there was a plan for how they would be.
I don't believe there's a plan at this time, other than leaving them in the natural state once they're stabilized.
No further questions from the commissioners? Is there anyone here from the public on the project? Anyone online?
Hi, good evening. My name is Dina Tedeschi. I'm a Morgan Street resident. My comments tonight are regarding old business number 3. First, not all abutters on the certified abutters list received a notification and had no idea of the proposed development. My past comments and concerns still stand regarding the abundant wildlife and related habitats for this wildlife in this area, as well as the extensive vegetation and old growth trees of 100+ years in this area. During the December Conservation Commission meeting, the board very intelligently requested locations on where the outfall is for the catch basins on Malden Street. After inquiring with the DPW Sewer Department, it is confirmed that the Malden Street catch basins flow into many community bodies of water. First flows into Indian Lake, it is then carried to Salisbury Pond, and then flows into Millbrook River by the 146 Walmart, and eventually ends up at a reservoir in Rhode Island where fishing is allowed. This development is proposing to funnel massive amounts of sediment, debris, runoff, and polluted water from impervious surfaces into 3 major bodies of water, one of which the city allows swimming, and across many communities and states. This is not acceptable. For the last few years, Indian Lake has had numerous algal bloom and other related issues, preventing any use of the body of water that is literally part of the community park and recreation space. The catch basin concerns would amplify and further complicate use of this community waterway. Additionally, the stormwater collection and treatment system plan talks about minimizing salt on driveways, yet the plan indicates very long driveways, which does not support this plan. Also, the very large front lawns would require watering and maintenance that frequently comes in the form of herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers. The noted statements about restricting or eliminating use of salt, as well as herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers cannot be guaranteed. They would tell the buyer about this expectation is not only a farce, but a blatant disregard for soil and water safety by passing the buck, and they have absolutely no control over what the homeowner uses or does. This neighborhood respects our soil and water by using minimal watering, and in my 20+ years in this neighborhood, I've never known or seen someone treating our lawns. The report also states that the property is so steep that an exiting or alternate roadway cannot be constructed. So why wouldn't we expect such drainage to have negative impacts on the surrounding homes and wetlands? Based on this proposal, plans also show a very unrealistic property of woodlands behind and surrounding the home with old growth trees. Now, of course, I know this is a proposed drawing from April of 2017, yet we are to believe these homes will have the area retreed and forested, and that's simply not true. There is nothing in the plan that conserves or restores such valuable and invaluable vegetation and trees. Old growth trees are critical and essential for numerous reasons, including preserving soil and preventing erosion and creating protection from the sights and sounds of 190 behind at least 4 and as many as 8 homes that abut 190 in this proposal. And the wooded area is appreciated by our neighborhood, again, for many reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Yep, we have one more. You should be able to unmute. Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, hi. This is Mary from Worcester. Through the chair, thank you for allowing residents to express their concerns. During the December 2025 Conservation Committee meeting, where the committee first looked at the Morgan Street project, I and other residents spoke and listed dozens of valid concerns, which the Conservation Committee said were valid points and appeared to be in agreement with many of the points. For time's sake, I will not repeat any of my previous points, but instead bring forward another set of concerns that should be addressed before any vote takes place. I will assume that my previous points from the December meeting are on record and are still being considered, and that the following new concerns are added to the growing list of issues for this project. Just a reminder that this development has been attempted to be approved by the city in the past on numerous occasions and was denied each time. Also, multiple city councilors have written letters and emails to both the Conservation Committee and the Planning Board expressing their opposition of this project. An error on the applicant's consultant's project narrative document is that the firm states that, quote, the project does not propose alteration within the 15-foot no disturbance zone, unquote. However, the firm goes on to contradict this by stating that a utility connection on Malden Street will be within the 15-foot disturbance limit. The Wetlands Project Act also states, quote, no grading, filling, excavation, removal of vegetation, or any other construction activities shall be allowed within 15 feet of any resource area, unquote. But the connection location at Malden Street is absolutely going to require excavation, grading, filling, removal of vegetation, and an array of construction activities. This is in clear violation of the Act. The consultant's comments do not override this requirement. The Wetlands Protection Act states that no construction activity is allowed within 15 feet of any resource area. Even if no structures are proposed within 15 feet, construction equipment and labor can easily violate this 15 feet no disturbance zone. What is going to happen when an excavator leaking oil and fluids backs up into the 15 feet no disturbance zone? What about waste and trash that piles up in this zone from labor workers? Who is enforcing this? And more importantly, what happens when these wetland resource areas are accidentally violated? At that point, the damage is done and the natural wetlands are now permanently affected. The cross-section of the plans propose underground drainage and underground sewer running above the water main stations between stations 5-50 and 6. The city does not allow drainage or water pipes to be installed above water mains. This is absolutely unacceptable, as any damage to the sewer or drainage pipes will cause a break in the pipes and allow hazardous sewer and drain waste to flow into and onto the public's water main below it. This will create a dangerous vulnerability to the public's drinking water, as it is risking both sanitary and surface drainage to leak into the water main if a break or damage in pipes occurs. This is in clear and obvious health hazard and danger to the public health and safety. The city's public health department, the Health and Human Services Division, the DPW Water Department, and the Housing and Health Inspections Department should be notified of this proposal before any vote occurs. These departments should also provide written approval stating that they are aware of the city's violation and are actually willing to allow this. Additionally, the plans show no cross sections for utilities from Station 6 to Malden Street. Proper engineering plans normally show cross sections of the entire limits. The Wetlands Protection Act states that no construction activity is allowed within 15 feet of any resource area. I'm sorry, I already addressed that. The applicant's consulting firm provides various, quote, approximate, unquote, measurements when measuring distances to and from the wetlands no disturbance zones. Given the severity of the wetlands in this area, the city should require actual exact measurements, not approximate measurements. When using approximate measurements, there is a gray area of measurements that will undoubtedly allow for the wetlands to be disturbed. How can the city approve such a project on the basis of only approximate distances? If the city does allow approximate locations, what is the threshold for the word approximately? Within 1 inch, within 1 foot, within 5 feet? It is not written anywhere what is allowed when using approximate measurements. This is not something you can leave up to chance and opinion, but instead should be reinforced by accurate and scientific measurements. The report is filled with approximate measurements that should not suffice. The applicant's stormwater report states, quote, restrictions on the use of this property are recommended for protection of groundwater. Use of salt on driveways and walkways is to be minimized, and use of pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers are to be restricted or eliminated, unquote. Who is going to monitor that these items are not used? How can anyone prove that every person involved with this project would be aware of these restrictions and actually follow them? According to the applicant's stormwater checklist, the applicant had checked off that, quote, calculations showing that the infiltration BMPs will drain in 72 hours, unquote. If that's true, what happens in the event of a multi-day storm where capacity is reached and exceeded before the 72-hour window? This will cause catastrophic damage to public and private property. The applicant also checked off that stating that, quote, infiltration BMPs do not adversely impact nearby wetland resource areas, unquote. However, in the event of a major multi-day storm, the BMPs will impact the wetland resource areas. Lot 2 proposes a snow storage area extremely close to the gravel driveway easement for the detention structures. This driveway would be required to be clear of snow and obstructions at all times, as it is very important for DPW and essential personnel to access the structures within the easement. A snowblower's blowing distance would easily throw snow from Lot 2's driveway well beyond the storage area and directly into the gravel driveway easement path, thus preventing essential personnel to access the easement. How would the developer guarantee clear access at all times? The two gravel driveway easements are subject to washout. How will these 2 gravel driveway easements stay stabilized for years to come without the 2 layers of asphalt paving that the city requires? Can the city or developer confirm that compacted gravel will not wash away after years of weather conditions? During the Conservation Committee meeting on December 15th, the applicant did not know the answer to the question of who was going to take on the road during the construction of the project. The applicant appeared confused, and they stated the homeowners association might be involved. The problem is there is no homeowners association in the Morgan Street neighborhood. How is such a project being looked at when basic information provided is clearly incorrect? There are several errors on the hydrology report. There is no company name listed on the report. The field where there should be a company name is left blank with the message saying, enter your company name here. Also, the report summary on page 189 states the findings are from the Fruit Street culvert check. Why is Fruit Street culvert check being listed on the Morgan Street report? These are elementary errors that create a very unsettling and uncomfortable feeling for residents doing their due diligence. The city should request a complete overhaul revision and resubmittal of all documents to ensure correct information is being provided. A vote should not be cast with such errors in the mix. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you considered joining the Conservation Commission? And I'm not being cheeky. I mean, it's a very thorough assessment of everything that's going on. You certainly did your homework.
Well, we're very, very concerned. This is a huge development in a very small area at the end of 2, 3, 4 roads with no sidewalks. It's all hills. It does not fit the character of the neighborhood. There's one way in and one way out that it just does not belong there, and it's been denied on various occasions, many times in the past. So we're just very, very concerned about this.
I understand. So the purview of the Conservation Commission limits some of the things we can talk about based on the concerns you raised, but certainly many of the ones you raised are within our jurisdiction. First, I want to clarify, and believe the applicant mentioned this earlier, and perhaps you didn't hear, they did move the utilities from the Malden Street connection to Morgan Street, so they will not be as close to the wetlands as previously required if they were going to connect through Malden Street. If you can you show that? Yeah. Which plans are currently available on the public website? Because these were very recent, like it was last week.
I can double check what's up on the website now.
Yeah, to make sure the public has access to the most recent set. And the commission's, also concerned about erosion, spillover, long-term maintenance and management of the property. We asked the question about who's going to be responsible for some of these drainage structures. I believe the answer was the city. Subsequently was the answer received. Could you just clarify that and make sure I'm not misspeaking?
That's correct.
That is correct.
Okay. What else can we address?
I can
that the
address
caller raised?
one of the administrative items that was brought up. There was a comment about a butter notification. I did just want to confirm that I went through right now and did double check that all of the abutters that were on the certified abutters list were listed on the certificate of mailing that we received, which is what ultimately is required to demonstrate compliance with a butter notification.
Okay.
For, we can't say for sure if it ended up making it to the person, but for as far as what we require, or what the regulations require for documenting proof of notifying abutters, that was satisfied by the applicant.
Any of the commissioners have any follow-up comments on this project?
Through you, Madam Chair. So one of the comments was about very mature trees, and just wondering what extent of identifying, really large trees that might be desirable to be kept.
We hadn't identified large trees on the property. The area is heavily wooded, quite dense. It's difficult to get through some of the areas based on the undergrowth that's in there. So identifying individual trees is somewhat of a monumental task for a surveyor. We have proposed, or we've shown on the plan, existing tree lines and proposed tree lines. And then through working with the planning board, I believe we're proposing replacement in the neighborhood of 50 trees, 3 to 4 per lot, plus the street trees that are required. So we recognize that we are removing a large number of trees on site, and we have made an effort to put some of those back.
Additionally, there's also about 2 acres of remaining land that will not be developed, and that's on the east side of the wetland boundaries as well. And there's some mature trees there that will be maintained.
So regarding the question raised about fertilizer, for example, as these houses go into private ownership, if there is no HOA, there is no process to control what takes place in the development once these lots are sold.
There isn't, but the commission typically does require that we record the operation and maintenance plan for the stormwater system on the deeds of the property. So that would be recorded for the overall property, and every time a property is purchased or sold, that restriction would be tied to that deed, and that is in perpetuity.
Do we have an example of the wording of how that's going to be prepared?
It would just be the operation and maintenance plan, which is included in the stormwater report that was submitted to your office.
I guess I'm specifically thinking about the handling of fertilizer, salt on these properties, draining into these drainage structures.
The wording in the operation and maintenance plan says that it is noted that the following restrictions on the use of this property are recommended for the protection of groundwater. The use of salt on driveways and walkways is to be minimized, and under any conditions where sand or other non-toxic materials are suitable, they are to be used. The use of pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers are to be restricted and/or eliminated. And then further along, we've got a statement on illicit discharges. It says, illicit discharges to the stormwater system are prohibited. Illicit discharges to the stormwater management system are discharges that are not entirely comprised of stormwater. Notwithstanding the foregoing, an illicit discharge does not include discharges from the following activities or facilities: firefighting, water line flushing, landscape irrigation, uncontaminated groundwater, potable water sources, foundation drains, air conditioning condensation, footing drains, individual resident car washing, flows from riparian habits and wetlands, dechlorinated water from swimming pools, water used for street washing, and water to use to clean residential buildings without detergents.
So there's the same standard that we see in almost all
Correct.
plans. So this gets attached to the homeowner's deed, but I guess the question's more for me about the settling basins.
The settling basins are designed to remove pollutants from stormwater.
Right, but they require maintenance. I mean, they're going to require sediment to be removed. They belong to the city. Is this?
Yep.
I just want to make sure that I'm really understanding this. So even though they're not deeded off, that who owns those parcels where those
The
structures are?
parcels will be owned by either the homeowners or by the applicant, Loring Enterprises. There are easements on those properties for the construction of the basins. Those easements will be given to the City of Worcester DPW for the ongoing maintenance and operation of those drainage systems.
So the city accesses them through the easement. They go in, enter it, clean out periodically sediments that have accumulated and/or remove overgrowth or anything that's an obstacle.
Correct.
The ownership of the actual basin will be,
The property owner which the basins fall. I believe the basin you're looking at falls across 3 different properties.
so just proportionately, wherever the property line falls, this is my part of the basin. And they
Correct.
understand or will be
It will
informed.
always be a basin. It will be a fenced area so that they will not have access to it. And DPW will have access to it in perpetuity.
So the deed will stipulate that these areas aren't to be filled in, made part of your backyard,
Correct.
otherwise
Yep.
used for.
Yep, that would be part of the lease agreement with the property owner. And then again, the lease would be recorded on the deed. or, sorry, easement.
Yep, easement. Another question. Lost it.
All right, through you, Madam Chair. So still on trees. I'm looking at the slope to the detention basin. Are you currently showing any trees? I see the tree line. Are there any additional trees along that slope as well?
There are trees along that slope.
We're just trying to figure out what we can do to maximize the amount of trees to ease some of the concerns.
The trees, they're actually located at the top of slope. There would be a tree in between the two houses on the top of the plan, and then there would be two trees behind the house on the top of the plan. And then there are 3 trees located behind the house, in between the house and the stormwater basin.
Yep, okay. Do you have a sense, as you probably have it there, what type of trees you're planting?
They're a mix of red oak and white oak.
Okay. Deciduous trees, okay.
Are those plans in the, I'm sorry. Are those plans in the public listing yet?
I did just update the plans that were on the city's website.
But your planting plan, is that,
That's all included.
It's in the details.
And through you, Madam Chair, a couple more questions. So there were some concerns brought up about inaccuracies and items that are going against city standards. So the two that come to mind, there was a statement about inaccuracies about the report. Can you address that?
I believe the narrative just approximated some of the distances, so because they varied. They varied anywhere between 30 and 50 feet. So the report or the narrative had said, approximately 30 feet at its nearest location.
Yeah.
But based on the plans that were provided and the survey work that was laid out, there is no work closer than 30 feet to the resource areas.
Okay. And then there was a statement made about a reference to a different property, and that's not related? Is that something that we?
I think it might have been a Scribner's error or a typo error. I remember one in the original submission.
In the stormwater part, yeah, the reference to Fruit Street was an inaccuracy.
Right, it was a different community entirely.
It's just simply a typo in the
Yeah.
report.
Has it
And
since been corrected?
It doesn't affect the overall.
Yeah. No, I think it was just a,
Okay. And then lastly, there was a statement about sewer lines over water lines and some concerns there, and statements about this is against.
Yep. As part of the most recent submission, the sewer department had requested that we eliminate the gravity sewer proposed through the development that ran down the extension of Morgan Street and down to Malden Street through that steep area between the two wetland systems. That has been entirely eliminated in favor of a small diameter force main that will pump up to Morgan Street. So the water main in the street and the proposed force main in the street are on opposite sides of the street. They're approximately 20 feet apart. Not to use the word approximately again. But the idea is, as long as water mains and sewer mains are at least 10 feet apart, they do not need a horizontal separation, so they can be set at the same elevation. Where we have water lines or water service lines that need to cross over sewer lines and vice versa, they need to be separated by a minimum 18 inches of vertical separation, or they need to be encased in concrete, and there are details within the plan set for both.
And all in compliance with city standards.
Correct, yep. And we have submitted the plans to DPW for approval. They have sent comments back to planning staff, and I believe we've addressed all the comments that DPW had.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any further questions at this time.
So we do have additional public comment?
Hello, my name is Jim Hatchie. I'm a resident of Morgan Street. I've heard, you can all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. The developer has provided some phasing plans, but it's known that over the history of this multiple attempts at developing the land that they let one of their conditions expire in 2005. Over 20 years have passed with minimum action to taken to start this project, and it was also denied by the city when applied. The lack of action in the past combined with, well, there are phasing plans, but it does, the history of the developer, are they going to start the project and then anything could come along, economic stoppages, company stoppages, climate changes or concerns, and is the developer going to leave the land partially cleaned and not finished, where some flooding or drainage could be taking place that could leave either damage to wildlife or the wetlands, but it could also possibly provide damage to residents, particularly on that hilly street of Medfield Street or downstream on Malden Street. The developer, I don't know if any developer is willing to spend the time, labor, and money to properly stabilize over an acre of land during long, uncertain lengths of time like we've had in the past. This would require large amounts of hydro seed, which they did say they were going to do. Are they going to do also blankets or silt fences, swales, and check dams to be installed and maintained for many months, possibly years, while this project's going on? And where's the confirmation that this will be properly maintained if such stoppages arise? Another thing I saw just looking at the layout of the project is, I think there's 3 or 4 of the homes that are being proposed to be built adjacent to or aiming on to the side facing Medfield Street, because it's also up, Medfield is on a hill. I see, I'm assuming all of these houses are going to have foundations put in place, and will this affect anything for drainage or possible flooding with these? I don't know why these individual parcels, I guess they're going to be built according to what the developer says as they're purchased. Why were the developments of the actual foundations placed so far back from the street entrance? Again, kind of pushed back toward the Medfield area. If anything, we're going to, that kind of digging and intruding in to put foundations, would that create some flooding possibilities onto the Medfield residents? I would think residents there on that street, possibly downstream onto Malden Street, could also have effects. I don't know about the ones up near the 190 corridor, but certainly the ones facing, butting the end of Morgan Street and where Medfield Street continues down. I could think that we could have certainly some bad effects of flooding there, especially if the phasing isn't carried through and the developer doesn't provide things to guarantee that things will happen in those stages. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of those concerns were concerns I raised last time as well, which is what happens in a work stoppage situation, what happens if suddenly the economy takes such a turn that this becomes I'm going to just walk away rather than complete this project. I know some of it can be addressed with bonding in terms of completing a street, completing a sidewalk, completing utilities. I don't believe there's any bonding requirement on finishing the houses, and long-term maintenance of a silt fence on an unstable property. I don't know how we really speak to that.
I mean, the commission does have the ability to secure the performance of certain components of this work related to the purview that it oversees. So in the past, the commission has had some projects where it's secured site stabilization, and then we've basically gotten a quote for, like, typically how it would work would be, the applicant would provide a cost estimate for hydro seeding a certain area that would be run by DPW for their take on if that's a realistic cost. And then the commission could require performance security in the form of cash, letter of credit, or bond. So it has been something that's been done in the past, so we don't do it often, but it is an option if the commission wants to. It's in the ordinance and regulations that the commission has that authority.
Understood. Are you anticipating any changes from the planning board that would impact what we're looking at tonight?
I don't. We've been postponed before the planning board for a number of meetings because it's their current purview to open and close a hearing in one night. So we've been asked to continue a number of times to address comments so that they're fully addressed when the planning board opens the hearing. So we have addressed all of the comments that have presented by staff and city departments. So we fully expect the planning board to open and close the meeting next Wednesday night without changes.
Through you, Madam Chair. So I was asking about the phasing earlier, about the number of lots that would be open, and you said it was flexible. And so I'm wondering, is there I'm sure you'll be talking to staff, if the economy's booming and, you have the funds to clear all of them, I think staff would probably want to give you some guidance and there. So
If I could interject there, I mean, this is something, again, now during the notice of intent process, the commission has the ability to condition this type of thing, and typically any sort of lot restriction in terms of number of lots that can be open at once would be something that's included in an order of conditions. I think, we probably wouldn't want to just kind of leave it open-ended for staff to deal with down the line, because then that kind of puts us in a awkward situation. So I think having that decision up front would be good. Similar projects in the past, typically we've limited lots open at once to 3 or 4. We had in our draft order of conditions for tonight listed 4, but that's a point of discussion that the commission can obviously have. But yeah, I mean, again, this is, when we're talking about lots being open at once, we're really referring to the kind of second phase. I don't know if you could flip to the phasing plan that shows the individual lot. It has like the gold erosion controls. Okay. All right, well, we might not have it, but essentially this is phase 1 where everything's open at once. So obviously here you have more than 3 or 4 lots disturbed at once. You have a very, very large site. When you get to kind of essentially just looking at the layout plan where you have those 13 individual lots with their own associated erosion controls, that's the point in time where we'd be talking about 3 or 4 lots at once. So just for full clarity, there would be a phase in the project where basically everything's open. But when, we talk about phasing, when we talk about lot restrictions, we're really talking about this part right here where it does come down to the individual lot development. And as Chris mentioned before, the plan, it would be to stabilize the entire site following that first sheet that we were looking at, the roadway construction, so that the site is essentially fully stable, and then the individual lots would then be destabilized again as they go to construct them. So just as a point of reference, when we talk about lot restrictions, that's typically what we're looking at.
And are there any disadvantages to, let's say, only clearing the north side of the road for potential home building versus clearing the entire site, stabilizing, and then working as you go?
Sure. The roadway cut itself results in approximately, if I remember correctly, 30,000 cubic yards of material, and that material needs to go somewhere. So as the roadway is being excavated, the idea was to place that material on the lots where the lots require filling for its construction. So we need to have the roadway open, the material disposal area, and then the area around the stormwater basin. So it would be difficult to clear only a portion while we're working on the entire thing.
And I'm presuming cost prohibitive to remove the material from the site and then
And
bring
then
it
bring it
back
back,
when...
yes.
Yeah.
One of the goals we had in designing the site was to balance the site so that we didn't have a large off-haul of material, again, due to construction costs. So keeping that material on site is absolutely necessary for the viability of the project.
Do you know why up until this point, this project hasn't gone forward? Is it just because the cost of getting this site prepared has been prohibitive for the last 3 decades? I mean, the parcel obviously has been sat there undeveloped since 190 went through.
That I don't know. Perhaps Mike Loring would have an answer to that.
Yeah, there's no reason other than it is not our core business to be developers, and it just, the timing was never right to do it for us. There's really no other reason than that. And also a point of clarification, I don't, the development was approved by the city in the past. It was never denied. We had to continue it a few times. And it basically, it lapsed because we didn't develop it. I think the requirement, you have to do something within 5 years, and we didn't. So, but yeah, there's no other reason that it hasn't happened other than it just wasn't the right time for us to do it.
And through you, Madam Chair, just based on historical numbers, how quickly do you see all of these lots being built out from?
Again, that varies a lot based on the economy.
Sure.
I think if everything went very well, they would be built out in 2 to 3 years. But if, things with the economy change, we also have an affordable lot as part of the requirement from the planning board. And I don't know how long it would take to find an affordable buyer.
Yeah, okay.
Anybody else online?
Yep, so we do have a couple hands raised.
Hi, thank you. Through the chair, just another opportunity to speak. I would really appreciate it. This is Dina Tedeschi. Excuse me, based upon some of the new information that was shared afterwards, would that be possible?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's also worth mentioning that this developer has never done a project like this, ever. And Mike Loring had just mentioned that now, that they're not core developers. They are a renovation and restaurant renovation company. So that gives pause to the concerns here that have been presented by the community members. I also think the new mention about the one or two trees that would be placed, the red or white oaks, so the deciduous trees that would be behind those lots offer zero protection between the lots and then 190. And we know at this time of year, without having any evergreens or coniferous trees, you would have zero protection from the sound, and then that barrier would be eliminated. Additionally, as mentioned about how quickly these lots would be developed, I am concerned about that as well. I think this is being presented as that there's concerns in Worcester about housing development. These kinds of buildings, these homes that are being proposed are at a price point that would not be, I know they said that they have one affordable home that would be planned, but the other 12 lots would not be in line with any of the other homes in this community in that price range, with the exception of perhaps one. So we would be looking at a real disconnect between the types of homes that literally are next door to these folks and on Malden, Medfield, and on Morgan regarding the cost of those homes. So I just think it's really interesting piece here that the concerns about how the economy may respond to development needs, so that they would be building one lot at a time based upon purchases. But that would be also a concern as far as taking a real change to our community landscape, not only with the homes and the kinds of structures that exist around us, but that would be a real shift in the community dynamic as far as the kinds of homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yep, we have one more.
Hello again, Jim Hatchie. Just wanted to add in, I'm a resident on Morgan Street, but I've been here for 33 years. And my biggest concern is just seeing the disconnect from the first attempts at developing, that the developer kind of looked like they started to clear at one time and then kind of left the project. And so I'm just wondering, again, with this development not really being familiar with doing a kind of development and a project of this size or type, whether they're going to have a commitment to carry through. If once the land is cleared, I would imagine that there are automatic things, even with hydro seeding, that could cause some flooding and certainly some disturbances to wildlife and the abutting communities, like I was saying earlier about some flooding possibilities passing on to Medfield Street, maybe down to Malden Street. So I'm just concerned that, again, even if they do it at a partial thing as they lay it out, they're still going to have to clear out the land like they mentioned all at one time to make it practical for them. Are they going to follow through? Or again, if they're going to not continue or finish with a phase like they did in past years, how do we have a confirmation or a feeling that they're going to finish this time as they did in the past? Thank you.
Thank you. So some of the comments are beyond the scope of this commission, certainly. The concerns, I think, are shared by all of us in a project like this when you're taking undeveloped land that has been, for all intents and purposes, nothing but the woods for multi-generations of families that are in the neighborhood. It's upsetting, it's concerning, it's all those things when you have a project like this next to you. Anything that we can do to try to mitigate the concerns of the abutters is appreciated, both for us as a commission having to make a decision based on the rules and the regulations, not whether we like this project or don't like this project. If you are in full compliance with the regulations, then we really have no choice but to approve the project. So I want to make sure, some of the abutters understand that it is not a we'd like to see kind of situation. We can ask for more trees. We can ask for the limited disturbance to be as tight as possible around this site. We can ask for vigilance on the part of the people who are responsible for maintaining this project site while it's under development, including people managing your stormwater reporting. It is on the city to make sure that things are enforced. If the neighbors notice something going awry on the project, they certainly may make a phone call and say, I see sediment flowing into the wetlands, I see something coming onto my property. They are, I sort of the eyes and ears on behalf of all of us if this is allowed to go through. So I would encourage them to pick up the phone and call if they see conditions like that on the site. Nobody wants to see a construction site get out of control. It happens. We've seen it across the city. All the hard work that the engineers put into these projects ahead of time to make sure everything goes right can be easily destroyed by one bad operator in a project. So keeping your subcontractors under control, keeping your contractors under control, is the responsibility of the developer. But we certainly be the eyes and the ears on a project like this, any project like this going forward. From my point of view, you did everything we asked, and in terms of trying to make the site right for us, for compliance with our regulations. I don't know if there's any other large concerns that we should address right in the order of conditions if we're ready to move forward.
Yeah, we do have a draft order of conditions if the commission's, basically at this point, if there's, additional information the commission wants from the applicant, that would be the time. If at this point we have everything we need to make a decision, then the commission should close the hearing and we can discuss an order of conditions.
Motion.
Make a motion to close.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Ineligible.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate the reminder. Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Tony, aye. What are the proposed order conditions?
All right, so in addition to the standard conditions, staff recommends condition number 23 for a construction schedule, 24 for wetland flagging, 25 for revised plans updated to reflect any minor changes required by the planning board, revised to include more detail about the grading and sizing of the temporary sediment basins, which shall be designed to provide storage for either the calculated volume of runoff from a 2-year, 24-hour storm or 3,600 cubic feet per acre drained. We would have condition number 30 for stormwater system maintenance responsibility, 31 for stormwater pollution prevention plan, 37 for stormwater management system maintenance, 39 for PE certification of installed stormwater infrastructure. We'd have an additional condition during construction that existing trash and debris from wetland resource areas on site be removed. Condition 43 for phasing and lot opening, that during the lot development phase of the project, no more than 4 lots be disturbed at a single time. 44, that permanent markers be installed at the locations depicted on the approved plan prior to construction of any structures. Condition number 46 for wood removal, 48 for dust control, 49 for dewatering, 50 for cement truck washing, 51 for equipment and material placement, 55 for construction monitoring reports with a tweak to specify that the report preparer should be an inspector with certification as a PWS, WPIT, PE, SESWI, CPE, SC, or a similarly qualified individual deemed appropriate by the commission. 56 for spill prevention. 64, that an as-built be provided as part of the certificate of compliance process. 65 for fertilizer. 66 for sand and salt. 67 for snow storage. 68 for wetland permitting. Ongoing conditions 37, 65 through 68, in addition to anything else the commission might want to see.
Comments from the commissioners? Questions about the conditions?
No.
Is there a
Make a
motion?
motion to issue the orders of conditions as described.
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni? Aye. Good luck at the planning board.
Thank you all for all your time on this project.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Next item, old business notice of intent, 1103 Millbury Street.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. So John Plifka from McCarty Engineering here tonight representing the applicant. So we're here for the construction of a 40-unit apartment complex located at 1103 Millbury Street. Since the last time this project was in front of this board, we received our ZBA approval at the January 12th meeting. Some minor changes to the plan set. Biggest one being that staff had expressed some concerns regarding the proposed cut slope in the rear of the site. We did some additional testing in that slope in December. I believe it was December 9th. We did a test pit that we went 17 feet deep and we observed no evidence of groundwater or weepage. We also, since the last time this has been in front of the board, have significantly reduced the amount of proposed grading in the rear of the site. So not only reduced the amount of required earthwork, but we were also able to maximize the amount of natural buffer at the top of the slope. We had been issued a memo from staff that I believe we've addressed everything that was asked of us, but that's kind of my quick flyover, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that the staff or board members might have.
Staff comments?
Yeah, so like John said, our main concern when this first came in front of us was the huge cut in the slope at the rear of the site. So seeing the reduction in grading there is appreciated. I think at first it was like a 16 to 20-foot cut in some places, and now that's down to 8. So from, perspective of potential groundwater breakout or just general issues during or post-construction, alleviates a lot of those concerns. Riprap is now proposed on that back slope, which don't necessarily love seeing riprap slopes. I think, we would have a preference for a vegetated slope, but if that's what's deemed necessary for the steepness of slope, that's fine. Yeah, like John said, we issued a memo. We had an initial round of comments, I think most of which we discussed at the last meeting. For the most part, those have been addressed through the plan revisions that we've received. Similar to the previous hearing item, we'd probably want to see some more calculations and sizing details for the temporary sediment basins prior to construction, but again, that's something that we could easily condition as a condition of approval if the commission's ready to move forward with this item.
Commissioners, any comments or questions about the project? Is there anyone online? Anyone here from the public? Questions or comments?
Make a motion to close?
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fertoni? Aye. Proposed order conditions?
All right, so in addition to the standard conditions, we have 23 for construction schedule, 25 for revised plans, updated to reflect any minor plan changes required by the planning board, revised to include more detail about the temporary sedimentation basins, including proposed locations at different stages of construction, for example, prior to and after construction of the building, parking lot area, et cetera, as well as their grading and sizing. And again, temporary sediment basins should be designed to provide storage for either the calculated volume of runoff from a 2-year, 24-hour storm or 3,600 cubic feet per acre drained. Condition 31 for SWIP, 34 for demarcation of limit of work, that orange snow fencing installed by survey be used to demarcate the limit of work and/or clearing in any areas without perimeter sedimentation controls. Condition 37 for stormwater management system maintenance, 38 for infiltration unit inspection, 39 for certification of stormwater infrastructure, 46 for wood removal, 48 for dust control, 49 for dewatering, 50 cement truck washing, 55 for SWIP reporting, 56 for spill prevention, an as-built plan as part of the COC process, condition number 66 for sand and salt, with ongoing conditions 37 and 66.
Does the applicant have any questions?
I guess, just curious, was it wood removal? Is that just the tree clearing? I just wasn't.
Yeah, it's just
clear on
about following any current guidelines related to Asian longhorn beetle.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
ash borer.
And SWIP reporting, is that something that's sent to the commission?
Yeah, we just want to
Or-
see copies of the SWIP reports by email, typically.
Okay, okay.
Commissioners, any comments or questions?
Make a motion to issue the orders of conditions as described?
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fertoni? Aye. You're all set.
All right, thank you for your time. Have a great rest of your night.
Have a good night. Next item, new business notice of intent, 0 Grafton Street.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Andre Cassis. I'm the general contractor.
Joseph Zrej. I'm the owner of the land.
On the property. Thank you.
And I believe we should have David online. He's David Sadowski. He's the engineer. I think he'll be doing the presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Chairman and board members. My name is David Sadowski. I'm the principal of DJ and Associates. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Before you is a proposal for two 12-unit apartment buildings to be placed on the parcel that's known as 0 Grafton Street. It's actually located between 1429 Grafton Street and 1461 Grafton Street, near the Worcester-Millbury town line that's shown on the plans. We have two different detention basins in the front and the rear of the property, and we also have an infiltration basin to catch the rooftop of each building. The site will be built in 2 phases. We're showing the overall site here. The first building will be built first, with the infiltration from the rooftop going into that basin, and also the roadway runoff going into the front stormwater basin. The stormwater basins were calculated for the 2, the 10, the 25, and the 100. All the information was submitted, and it was reviewed by Planning and Regulatory. They noted that we didn't use the high end of the values of the 100-year storm and such, so we revised the calculations and used the 10.8 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period. And the basins, both of the basins, work with those revised calculations. But what I did not, or we did not know, was that we placed the riprap aprons within between the 15 and 30 foot no structure line. We didn't realize that the riprap aprons were considered a structure. So what we are trying to do is we're trying to get a discretionary allowance to allow the riprap to be placed in those areas. Due to the amount of rain water that could fall in the 100-year storm, and not asking for any variance or any water to leave the site, we've sized the basins as such. And unfortunately, with that amount of water, when water coming out of the basin, we want to ensure that no channeling exists and that we end up getting a drain-like flow of water. So their aprons are 11 feet long on each side and 13 feet or 15 feet across at the end of them, making a TP type so that the stormwater, and there's also details on the riprap, how it'll be anchored, the size of the rocks and such, into the ground. It's a pretty gentle slope in that area. The whole site is really a gentle slope, but we want to ensure that the integrity of the stormwater, of the wetland system remains intact. So what we understand, we don't have a DEP file number yet, but to give us some direction with the project, we wonder if we could somehow get somewhat of a storm, like a straw poll or whatever, to see if the commission would lean towards the discrepant area allowance. I prepared a sheet answering all the questions on the discrepant area, saying the word wrong, discrepant area allowance. And also there was a 11-point review letter that was issued to us, and we gave answers to all those questions. Of course, we're going to ask for a continuance, perhaps to the second meeting in March, but it would be great to know if the allowance would be allowed. I'm open for any questions, and like you've already heard, there's the owner applicant is there, and also the construction manager.
Thank you. Comments?
Sure, so just a brief high-level overview of staff comments. Dave covered a lot of it already. One of the things we'll be looking for is test pit data at the location of the subsurface infiltration unit, just to confirm adequate separation to groundwater and bedrock at that location. A couple other points about the stormwater report, which were already addressed in a revised report, mostly related to the precipitation totals. On the 30-foot buffer and riprap question, so this is, a point that's brought up frequently. We have generally been pretty consistent about pushing to get riprap aprons outside of the 30-foot buffer in our review and our comments. The way the ordinance regulations are written, basically structures are listed as no permanent or temporary foundation, building, road, sidewalk, bridge, sign, billboard, or other permanent or temporary structure shall be placed within 30 feet. So that definition, over time, has typically been interpreted to mean no hardscaped areas within a 30-foot buffer. There have been other projects in recent years where discretionary allowances were issued for riprap aprons within the 30, including Brant Lane, Myrick, Webster. Some of those are not exactly the same situation as this. They're more redevelopment site with existing site constraints, but there are some new development projects where riprap aprons have been approved within the 30-foot buffer. So I think it's a point that the commission should try to clarify in terms of, a consistent application of the interpretation of that regulation. One other note is just that in that section 424 in the regulations, it mentions an exemption related to components of any stormwater, flood control, water conservation, erosion control, or soil conservation project otherwise approved. A lot of folks have interpreted that to mean that any component of a stormwater system is exempt from this regulation. My understanding of how it's been historically applied in the past is in reference to projects, for example, specifically related to stormwater improvement and not necessarily an ancillary part of a new development. So thinking of the Regatta Point example, that was a project where DCR was looking to do stormwater improvements for their site. The only feasible way for them to do that was to have an apron in the 30. And so that, to me, is an example of a project that meets that exemption. So a project that's really focused on improving stormwater, not just trying to mitigate for new development. But that said, there is still the discretionary allowance, and ultimately that's the commission's purview, and decision as to whether or not to issue that is up to you. The discretionary allowance section of the regulations kind of lists out 5 different criteria that need to be met in terms of what's eligible for a discretionary allowance. So that was, I think Dave referenced the kind of response to that specific piece, which is included in the response to comments that's saved in the Google Drive folder for this project. So yeah, at this point, I guess I would turn it back to the commission. Happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
So my read of the regulations was strictly speaking that the project had to be a stormwater project, had to be a flood control project, had to be those and/or a project that gives the public access to a resource area, which are my interpretation of where the discretionary allowance comes into play, that those things could be considered. I guess my preference here would to see nothing in the 30-foot that was introduced by human beings into the buffer zone. For certain head walls and pipes, in my mind, don't belong there. If the rock used to de-energize the water flow is in the buffer zone, I feel a little bit less concerned about the placement of rocks to divert and slow down the water, but the head wall and the piping in the 30-foot, to me, are undeniably structure.
Is it okay to speak?
Yes, of course.
Through the chair, that is our intent. There won't be any head wall, there won't be any pipes. It would only be the rock itself and the erosion control barrier so that work or anything else wouldn't spill any further down. Other than that, everything would be outside of the 30, just the stone itself and the erosion control barrier.
I think we need to clarify the regs going forward if we have that opportunity on the.
Yeah, and we have the discussion of the ordinance and regulation update later on the agenda. Obviously, it won't be applicable to the projects we're reviewing tonight, but I agree that some clarification could be
helpful
added to the regulations to make it more clear and more easy for us to apply on a consistent basis.
Yep, I agree. So have you, I assume you've looked at all options to divert the water elsewhere on the property, either retaining it in the infiltration system, or I see there's not enough elevation change here, I guess. I guess what have you tried and rejected as an option?
Through the chair, if that was addressed to me, what we have done is we've raised the pipes in elevation inside the basin a foot, foot and a half, so that the outfall could be brought back further towards the actual detention retention area. I mean, we have a 4-bay on them, and we also have the basin itself. What could be done, I guess, is we could have more of a free fall come out of the pipe and get the pipe up even higher. But with the gradual slope there, and not wanting any type of harm to the environment or the wetland system that's down below it, we are, I guess our goal was to try to just get the riprap itself in that 30. We can pull them back another 5-6 feet. We can make the apron somewhat smaller, but we feel the bigger apron is a benefit to the wetland system than making a smaller apron at the end of the outfalls. I mean, those are the things we looked at, and we're trying to protect the environment. It is just the riprap itself in those areas.
Well, we're not voting on this tonight.
Correct, but I think
You're looking for a would we be okay? I think if we can pull the pipe, the head wall, everything out, if you found no other option but to place the apron in the 30-foot, I would be okay with that. The other
Through the chair again, we're just looking for that direction because we're going to be bringing a revised plan to the next meeting that's going to tighten some things up. We didn't indicate, we show a detail for the construction entrance. We didn't call it out on the plan. We need to test in where the infiltration is going to go between the two buildings. Those tests need to go on the plan. The modeling was not shown in the 3 test holes that were done in the detention basins themselves. So there's a few different things that need to be added, but if we have to, if we somehow have to get the aprons outside the 32, we're going to have to somehow look at regrading around the basins and getting it closer towards the property line and closer towards the building. And we're trying to keep them only 3 feet deep, so that there's anyone in the apartments or anyone's on the street, that there'll be less chance of falling into a deeper hole. Detention area, I know we could do fencing, but trying to make this blend in with the natural environment that's there and, reduce it. We're going to have there's that power line that goes down through. Everything on the inside of that will be a tree line that will be left. Right now, it's a mowed field that used to be there for the building in the back when they cut this piece off. So the tree line's not going to change on the property. All those things are taken into consideration to try to blend the project in and get some affordable. We're going to have affordable units. We have handicap units. I know that those aren't the purview of this commission, but that's something that'll be presented at zoning and at planning.
The other commissioners, thoughts about your general comfort with this?
I would be amenable to having the head wall and pipes pulled back as previously mentioned as well.
I concur with that.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Yeah.
You'd be okay, I mean, we're not voting tonight, so it's just in general to let the applicant know whether or not moving the head wall and pipe out would be sufficient, and we would be okay or not with the riprap in the 30-foot.
I guess I'm okay with it.
All right, I guess you have your answer. Is there a motion to postpone?
So moved.
just quickly,
Second.
Dave, were you looking for the meeting on March 2nd or the following meeting on March 23rd?
Eric, it's going to have to be the following meeting because we're going to have to do test holes and add to the plans. So I want to make sure that we have a plan prepared that we can get in a week before the meeting and have everybody have a chance to look at it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Kenton?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Oh, Commissioner Kirschner, you can vote on this one.
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni, aye. Okay, so we'll see you later in March.
I think it's the 23rd unless you change the schedule.
It's the 23rd, yep.
23rd.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much for your time.
Have a good night. Next item, new business, request for amended order of conditions, 9 and 13 Elton Street.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes?
Thank you. Matt Morrow here for the applicant, Tony Bianco. Are you guys going to share screen or did you need me to? Oh, there you go. That answers that one. Thank you. So what we have in red are essentially it's a red line drawing that shows the differences that were on the site. Outlined in the blue mark area, which is actually under the enforcement provisions and was presented now as a separate document, is a replanting and restoration area, which actually starts over by the section of the sloped area where the stream comes out. There was some fill that was placed right up adjacent to the stream that in the spring is slated to be cleaned up and the area replanted according to the planting schedule. We had the engineer from Land Design Collaborative review the as-built drawings and the the placement of the stormwater system to ensure that it would work as originally intended, which was done and submitted. So we submitted the differences in the work locations as an amendment to the order of conditions. My understanding in reviews by DEP of the extension request or the amendment request, originally I had submitted it with the restoration plan as part of the amendment. Those have since been separated out. So they're now two separate documents. That's about it. It's fairly straightforward. It's an attempt to administratively remedy the record while allowing for under enforcement for compliance with cleaning and replantation of the area that had been touched.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Staff comments?
Yeah, so just as a refresher for the commission, because it's been a while since we've looked at this one, but this was the enforcement order that we had issued for the active project at the end of Elton Street. You can kind of see underlain on the plan that we were looking at before what was previously approved. You can see there was an infiltration unit proposed down below. You can see the limit of work kind of in that darker gray/black line. And then you can see what was actually constructed with the both the the utilities and the stormwater infrastructure, and then also a riprap slope on the back side of the site. So I think our only real concern about the amendment request is just the riprap slope in the 30. Not to get back to our discussion on riprap in the 30, but I think, again, this was an area that wasn't previously within the approved limit of disturbance. So I think in this case, that riprap is, it's providing slope stability for a slope that was possibly constructed a little steeper than it was supposed to be. But it's not, providing some sort of stormwater attenuation benefit. So I think that's our only lingering concern about the amendment request. As Matt mentioned, we're kind of taking the restoration piece out separately, and we can address that through the enforcement order. So the amendment, the piece about the amendment request is really just permitting what changes have been made on site already from what was originally approved by the commission, because it's a different limit of work, it's a different slope, it's a different slope treatment. So those are the things that we're reviewing under the amendment request, whereas the planting and restoration of the buffer zone and wetland is more appropriate under the enforcement order. So maybe we could just kind of separate this out and discuss first about the slope or any other changes from the approved plan, and then kind of follow that up with a discussion about the restoration.
Got it, okay. Just so I can clarify in my own mind the separate issues. The original scope of work did not include that slope stabilization, did not include the riprap. In fact, didn't include any disturbance outside the dark dotted gray line.
Correct. And to be fair, the area of disturbance on the east side of the site was much closer to the wetland than what ended up being the limit of work. But yes, that's correct. That dark gray line indicates the previously approved limit of work. So that whole riprap slope was not approved or within the original planned area of disturbance.
Okay. And the infiltration structure did go in or didn't go in?
The infiltration structure went in at an alternate location. You can see it's at the top of that riprap slope. We did ask for certification from an engineer that the system will still function as designed. I think the stormwater system was probably fairly oversized to begin with, just based on, having both the unit down below and up in the driveway. So I don't remember the exact calculations off the top of my head, but I think they're probably already providing more recharge than they necessarily needed to. But I think our concern was more just about whether it would still function based on the different soil characteristics and location of the new location at the top of the slope. But the engineer did provide certification that it would work as designed.
Okay. And the area that currently has the riprap was stripped of vegetation in order for the riprap to be installed?
Yes, maybe we could go to the photos. I don't remember precisely exactly what it looked like before disturbance, but you can still see some trees there. There was certainly vegetation. It was kind of a wooded area. I don't know how many trees were there previously before it was disturbed, but the whole site was wooded. It wasn't jam-packed with trees. There were still openings, but it was all, either ground cover or trees across the entire site prior to development.
All right. So that's the order, the amended order.
Correct.
This section of work. The rest of it is dealt with in the enforcement.
Correct.
The enforcement order. So under consideration is whether this is allowed to stay, should be removed, and/or modified.
Correct.
Okay.
So if I could interject here,
Yep.
if that's okay?
Go ahead.
Eric, can you go back to the plan that I submitted, if you don't mind? Thank you. So what I'd like to point out is if you look at the wetland line that was delineated, this wetland originates at the end of Elton Street with a drainage outlet. You can see the flared end right there. And then it goes swiftly downhill and essentially hugs the railroad track or above the railroad tracks in that area, and then goes to a wetland that's well away from the area of proposed development. So as imposing as the riprap looks on your drawing, it's not the entirety of the riprap that's within 30 feet of that wetland. It's the majority of what is on the northern side by the blue line that is marked in for the restoration. And even though the documents are separate, I would point out that the way I wrote my restoration plan was to allow for a more shrub layered planting than what was there. What was in that area that went to the area that I flagged coming for the drainage outlet was very thinly wooded, and it was mostly full of trash from the street spillover. So we're going to not only make sure that area stays clean, but we're going to do a really good restorative planting as a buffer area. So what comes off of that stone will go into an upland/wetland buffer. I just wanted to point that out, because even though the documents have to be considered under separate mechanisms, they, by nature, pardon the pun, are interrelated. So I just wanted to point that out. And Eric, thank you for doing the screen. I appreciate it.
That's all, Maddie, but thanks.
Well, Maddie, thank you for doing the screen.
No problem.
All right, so the new infiltration structure at the front of the property, the riprap slope. I don't imagine that the change of where the deck stairs are located is of our concern.
No, I mean, that's typically something
Yep.
we probably wouldn't.
I just want to make sure
note, but-
which of the red,
Well, all of the changes are reviewable, obviously.
Right.
But the main ones that, drew our attention was the slope, essentially. Matt, do you know the steepness of the slope in that small section that's in the 30, where the riprap is currently?
It's a good question. I didn't take any slope measurements. I mean, it does get pretty steep. I would have to say it goes to about 8% probably at a minimum in that one section over by where the outlet is. The steepness of the slope going around when it starts going to the south part of the site, as we're using the north arrow on the plan. I mean, yeah, it's the top of the hill, basically.
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to think of it from a question of just could it be stabilized with vegetation if that, because, if this were coming to us as a new project, and there was proposed grading on site associated with a, 3-unit residential structure, that we would not allow slope to be riprapped in the 30-foot buffer as part of that. I know, I mean, the riprap had originally been all the way, into the wetland, which is why the enforcement order was issued in the first place. But, some of that was removed and they were able to just kind of hydroseed it. I guess our preference would probably be to see the same action for the section that's still in the 30. But that's just staff's recommendation, I guess.
But honestly, leaving the riprap there and just replanting the area, essentially the area is going to wind up being better than it was. It was pretty stressed out when I did get there before the area was even touched. I don't think it's going to have any deleterious effects on the wetland now or in the future once everything is reestablished and restored. I mean, most of it actually is probably been pulled away from the 30-foot as it is at this point. The wetland that I flagged over coming off the drainage outlet actually was a pretty conservative delineation. I gave a lot of deference to that water channel. I actually could have probably forged an argument that the wetland started farther downhill, but I wanted to make sure that water channel was left intact. And it's one of the reasons why I'm concentrating the heaviest buffer plantings in front of it. I want to make sure that water channel stays pretty much cleaned out by natural filtration action. So, I mean, yeah, I'll work with the commission on whatever it needs. But again, my opinion on it is, professionally, I just, knowing your ordinance and, I do acknowledge it. From a standpoint of how would it impact the wetland moving forward, I don't think it would have any deleterious effects moving forward.
and alternatives on a slope like that would be either planting and/or,
You're probably going to have to pin that site down.
yep,
And pinning it down, once you remove that riprap, it would have to be very heavily monitored and very heavily planted. So the planting regime going into the restoration area doesn't have to be like pinned down or matted. It starts to get a little bit steeper as you head into the riprapped area. But I mean, like I said, I'll do whatever you guys feel is appropriate and just.
I'm just having trouble following one of the lines off the corner of the, I'll bring my,
I can walk up to the screen and try and show where this is here. So the 15-foot buffer is here. So it comes basically right up to the edge of the riprap. So there's roughly 15 feet here is where I'm talking about that's in the 30-foot. Right.
so to just even remove it from this corner, Do we know about how many square feet of riprap that really amounts to?
It's probably, looks probably like maybe 15 by 20, something like that.
And just extend the, I realize the planting is the restoration planting of the enforcement order, but could extend the planting into the area where the riprap's removed. And commissioners have any strong feelings about that one way or the other?
So, I mean, if the riprap is going to be removed in the 30, I think we probably want to continue the amendment request hearing to allow for revised plans to show that being removed.
What it would look like. Yep, I agree.
Or condition it to provide revised plans as a condition of approval, either way, I guess.
Well, I mean, if you condition it to remove it, then you're okay following up to make sure that it, well, you're gonna have to follow up no matter what,
Right.
to make sure it happened.
Yeah, if the commission wishes to condition it, I'll follow it up with Eric.
We could do that.
Okay.
General question on the page south of the red riprap. Is that crossing into adjacent properties? Is that what I see there?
It appears to be.
Are those the owner's properties, or is that someone else's?
I can't answer that question. I don't know. I was just concentrating on the administrative and replantation. I didn't even think about this area.
Yeah, similarly, did not really look at that side. It looks like, based on
I'll speak to my client about it.
GIS information, it looks like a separate owner, but
So that should probably be updated as well.
Did the original limited disturbance follow a tree line or something? Why does it move off of the property line?
so the original limit of disturbance stays on the property line. It's the property line's that solid black line that's straight at the bottom there, and the limit of
Right.
disturbance is,
So the dotted gray line, I thought, was the original limit of the work, I guess.
it's this line right here
Yep.
that kind of goes up and around. So it is, I mean, it's off property here where it's in the street, but the rest of it is within the property bounds.
Yeah, no, that's not what I meant, I'm sorry. I just meant that it probably isn't even relevant, but why wasn't it following the property line? Is there some natural feature down there that it was meant to protect, or?
Well, I think the original intent was just to limit the limit of clearing to the max extent possible. I remember when this was in for permitting, we were actually questioning if it was going to be feasible to get the machinery down there that they needed through that small little kind of path on the south side of the plan.
All right, yeah, because I
But
want to
yeah.
make sure we're not approving something that encroaches on somebody else's property. And the way the way it reads, it looks like we'd be approving something that don't really have a right to approve.
Right. There is also always like a standard condition in any order of conditions that we issue that says that the order doesn't confer any property rights or allow people to do things that they're not allowed to do.
Right.
We're really just looking at it from a wetlands protection perspective, but we could add a condition just clearly stating that
That we're not
this
approving the
amendment request
disturbance
does
of
not.
somebody else's property.
Yeah, and the concern would be whatever, steps they take to fix that, would that worsen the condition on the abutter side? So, for that reason, I'm a little hesitant to just condition it.
So you're saying you'd prefer not to, under the current presentation of this?
So you'd want to see revised plans before closing?
Yep.
That address that? Okay.
Applicant okay with addressing that issue and postponing this to the next hearing date?
Yeah, I mean, if the commission's more comfortable that way, I'd rather have everybody comfortable and have us operating from a, a plane where we're all on the same page and that there's no questions left unanswered. So that's fine.
Okay, so address.
If you want to, what's the next meeting? What is it, the 23rd?
It's March 2nd, and then March 23rd is the one after that.
Oh, you're going March 2nd. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, that's fine. I can wait till the 2nd and take care of it. That's not a problem.
Okay, so I think it sounds like we want to see revised plans that remove riprap from the 30 and from the adjacent.
Yeah, address
Property.
the abutters property.
Okay,
So that we're not
so that's what
approving.
we'd be looking for. All right.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Frattoni? Aye. Okay. See you March 2nd.
Yep. And Eric,
Yep.
I will be in touch regarding Salisbury Hill.
Okay. Sounds
So,
good.
thanks, guys.
Thank you. Next item, new business, request for amended order of conditions, 378 Plantation Street.
Good evening. Derek Massionis with VHB alongside Chris Anderson with UMass Memorial Healthcare. Here tonight to request an amendment to the order of conditions for 378 Plantation Street. Up on the screen here is kind of an existing conditions photo. I think this was taken back in September of last year. But the site work has been substantially complete on the site. The healing garden, which you can kind of see on the other side of the existing intermittent stream, was in construction but is now substantially complete. We still have some erosion control measures around the healing garden itself, just because that did finish up, I believe, in late November, and some of the seating areas didn't take. So we still have some temporary measures up around the healing garden itself. But I know we've been back in front of the commission a couple times on this site and would just like to kind of walk you through that process. So back in September of 2024, that was for the healing garden design that you see up on the screen, and like I said, is now substantially complete. Pretty much a year prior to that, in November of 2023, we came to the commission for, you can kind of see just west of the healing garden, called it like a grass berm area. There's some additional fill from the original expansion of the facility that we kind of regraded and brought that area up to grade, kind of adjacent to the upper parking lot against Plantation Street. And we did that in hopes of eventually, I guess I can take another step back. After we got the approvals for the bermed area, we were in front of the planning board in January of 2024 for 3 additional floors on the facility. So no additional site work, but the expansion for the facility was like a 15,000 square foot expansion over 3 additional floors. And that was anticipated for additional beds in the future for the facility. So we are here tonight to discuss both the facility itself is adding 24 additional beds and 4 additional treatment rooms, and therefore we are providing ancillary parking to meet the zoning requirements on site. So as you can see, this is a bit of an illustrative of the parking expansion that is just off of that upper parking lot adjacent to Plantation Street. The expansion is 32 additional parking spaces, and kind of you can see it heads towards the Healing Garden, where we have 2 terraced retaining walls with a 10-foot landscape section in between that to allow for a nice kind of terraced wall setting with landscaping in between. So those walls are both about 6 feet tall, and those sit outside of the 30-foot no structure zone. We are providing a sidewalk connection from this parking lot expansion to the existing sidewalk that takes you down to the main entrance of the facility. That's up along the existing upper parking lot area. If we can switch over to the grading and drainage plan. So our limit of work from the parking area, so to speak, is pretty much right at the existing back of stalls. And everything is going to be graded down to 2 catch basins that are in the center of the driveway for the parking expansion. These catch basins will then be sent to or enter a closed drainage system, go through a water quality unit structure, and then as you can see, there's a subsurface infiltration system. We do have a bit of an outlet control structure that eventually heads to a flared end section. And not to bring up riprap again, but we are proposing a riprap apron within the 30-foot no structure zone. Everything else, there's some minor regrading between the 30 and the 15-foot buffer zone, but everything else is pretty much outside of that 30-foot no structure zone, like the retaining walls I mentioned as well. I believe staff did provide some comments to us, and we've reviewed those and addressed those in a response to comments letter and updated plans that we did share. So happy to answer any questions regarding staff's comments or questions from the commission. Oh, and this is just our erosion control plan that I kind of highlighted. As I mentioned earlier, our limit of work is roughly the same as what we previously disturbed for that grassy knoll bermed area. So we're not really proposing any expansion. Actually, some of the erosion controls are still out on site today. So we are proposing a double straw bale at the base of the existing slope.
Yeah, so we had some just questions about stormwater report calculations, which were addressed in the response letter. And then, as Derek mentioned, we also had the comment about the riprap slope and the interpretation on structures in the 30-foot buffer. Just based on previous discussion that we had, I don't know, is it possible to adjust that pipe so that the pipe outlets outside of the 30 and you're just having the riprap within?
I think so. We could redesign that. There's where the sidewalk is, and then there's actually a shed pad as well that sits just off the sidewalk. We could regrade the area behind that and pull it in a little bit tighter to the wall just to get that pipe that it'll sit kind of right outside the 30-foot. And then the riprap section would likely need to extend into between the 15 and the 30, but we could definitely look at bringing the pipe in the flared end section out of that.
I mean, I think we've discussed the topic a lot tonight already. I think as long as trying to be consistent about applying the regulation and then also consistent about trying to make sure we're doing everything we can to get it as far out as possible, I think staff will be fine with it.
Did you at any point consider going up instead of out with parking? I mean, rather than, this small wetland area is now fully encroached upon by impervious surfaces between buildings and parking lots on all sides. Was there any thought to going taller rather than wider with parking to get you the spaces that you need?
I'll say we have looked at other parking solutions on the property, especially in this upper lot. There's really not even enough width. It's only a single drive aisle now with double parking on both sides, so there'd be no opportunity for ramps to create a second level in that location. And then in the other part of the project, which is on the other side of the wetland, it's into a steep bank hill right now. So those options really have been off the table. We'd love to put more parking on this project, as it would help all of the staff, but this is just a requirement for visitors, the planning, by a zoning regulation, so.
So this is not really a question to you, this is more a question to staff, and it's more a cosmic question. Our zoning that requires us to provide spaces for cars is often in conflict with our requirement to not have so much impervious surface in the world. And there's no workaround for limiting the amount of parking in favor of not developing this site so completely. It sits, right above Lake Quinsigamond. Everything that falls here eventually falls into Lake Quinsigamond.
Yeah, I can't speak to the zoning requirements with much expertise. I know there's, ways of getting variances or waivers of certain requirements, but ultimately, when it comes to us, we also have a set of requirements that we review for, so if they're, proposing additional impervious area and it meets stormwater standards and applicable setbacks,
There we are.
it's something that we should be approving, but
I
I do take your point
get
from
that. I'm
the
not-
broader perspective about reduction in impervious, and I think we see that in all sorts of things, not just parking requirements, but sidewalks and
Right.
turnarounds and stuff like that, so I
And
definitely take your point.
Any
but-
contemplation of a pervious pavement. I know from a maintenance point of view, they aren't easy to maintain in this part of the country, but, what's UMass's position on attempting to make this as, less environmentally impactful than all of this asphalt will be?
So I think there's photos that we submitted to you guys, but I think the development that we created with that healing garden within the woods is really an impactful spot. We purposely are choosing to also make like a terraced wall instead of like a 20 or 15-foot retaining wall that just is like an awful eyesore. So we want to plant within that boundary that gets you up to the parking. So we feel that the enhancements we're doing are, to some degree, better than what's out there now.
What is the opportunity to put in any more trees between the parking area and the street? So the garden is lovely for the people who are present on the property, but not, it's not even visible to people passing by.
So we did, as part of the original project, create a berm along the street with additional tree plantings. So that's obviously not captured in this response, but along the Plantation Street Road, I don't know, we must have added 10 trees roughly.
Yeah, there's 9 trees along Plantation Street.
Are they in yet?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
And then we are providing trees within the landscape areas themselves, and then, as Chris mentioned, substantial plantings between the 2 terraced walls, and then the separation from the lower wall to the healing garden as well.
So at this point, you've maximized the capacity of the building, and you should not need any more parking
Correct.
once this is in place.
Correct. So what he mentioned earlier is that we went back to the state. Originally, the building was built for 72 beds. We were able to expand part of our addition to be 3 stories taller on the far right side of the building. I don't know if we have a picture of it anywhere. But that created the opportunity for us for 24 more beds, which this community needs very actively. There's over 100 people in the emergency department right now waiting for space. So by adding more beds, it creates the challenge for more parking, which is why we had previously cut this area of the lot and bermed it with the soil with the intention of doing this.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? I don't suppose we have anybody on the phone or here? Nope. People have had enough. All right, so We are requesting the movement of the pipe and any other hard structure other than the rocks out of the 30-foot buffer, and you say you can probably accomplish that.
Correct, yeah, we can regrade along that top retaining wall and move the pipe outside the 30-foot.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to see, or can we vote on that condition?
Yeah, so we should follow the same procedure as we would for a NOI, just by closing the hearing and then discussing the amended order of conditions after. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to close?
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni? Aye.
So I guess for the amended order, we would really just be modifying the revised plan condition to require that the pipe be shifted outside of the 30 and that the apron be set back as far as feasible. I think that's it, really. All the other conditions that are existing don't really need modification at this point.
Right. And there's been no partial certificate of compliance on this project?
No.
None, nothing? Okay. All right. Is there a motion?
Motion to issue the amended order of conditions?
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni? Aye. You're all set?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, certificate of compliance requests.
All right, so first certificate of compliance request is for 321 Greenwood Street. So back in 2012, a order of conditions was issued for construction of a commercial building. The building was never constructed, and the order has since expired. So the applicant is looking to close out the order of conditions for an invalid order of conditions, so.
Simple enough. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni? Aye. Next.
All right, up next, we have Elm Park Dredging Project, which was permitted back in 2022. I believe Paul is online and can talk to the project.
Yes, I am. This is Paul McManus. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Again, Paul McManus from Ecotech. The commission will recall that, excuse me, you issued an order of conditions to dredge a portion of the Elm Park Pond under and near the bridge that you see in the photo. And we received an order of conditions from the commission. We got administrative approval to expand that a bit. We also got a 401 water quality certification from Mass DEP for the project. The project has been completed. You may recall that there was a proposed expansion area both to the south and the north of the initial area at the bridge. Excuse me, unfortunately, the north expansion area had elevated arsenic, which is not unusual for Worcester, but it had elevated arsenic, so that area could not be dredged. The area really just to the right of the image on the screen. The remainder of the work was done. We did some follow-up during and post-construction, submitted a completion report, which has also gone to Mass DEP relative to the 401 water quality cert. And the applicant, which is the City of Worcester Parks Department, is requesting a certificate of compliance.
Staff comments?
No comments from staff.
Commissioners?
No comment.
Is there a motion?
Motion to issue the certificate of compliance?
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni? Aye. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. If the commission would send the COC to me, I will make sure that it gets recorded.
Okay, will do.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Good night.
All right, up next, we have 173 Lake Ave North. So this project was permitted back in 2023, is for construction of 2 duplexes with associated driveways and stormwater management. This request is only for lots 163 and 165, so it's a partial certificate of compliance request. As you can see, the site is fully stabilized. This was from September, this photo. And then staff did visit the site in January to confirm the site is fully stabilized. We did get confirmation that the Coltech units were installed according to the plan. So yeah, just looking for a partial COC on this.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Frattoni? Aye.
All right, and then we have 4 Flowery Hill Drive. So this was an addition onto a single-family home with stormwater improvements. And let's see, so an as-built plan has been provided along with a letter from an engineer certifying that the plan was completed according to the approved plans. They installed their permanent markers, which honestly, I think they're the best permanent markers I've seen with the cute little beaver, but.
Going to recommend them from now on?
Yep. This is my go-to photo when I share it with applicants. But, yep, they're looking for a complete certificate of compliance. So staff did visit the site back in June, and it had pretty much grown in, and aerial imagery from September showed that it was grown in even better than when it was in June, so.
Okay.
Motion to issue the certificate of compliance?
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Frattoni? Aye.
All right, and last one. So this is for construction, this is 241 Lake Ave. So this was permitted back in 2022 for construction of a single-family home. This was part of the old Four Seasons property that was divided off. So one of the new homes built on this property, divided off on a lot. They did come back in 2024 to permit the deck leading down to Lake Quincy. An as-built plan has been provided confirming that and a letter from an engineer has been provided confirming that the project was conducted under the approved plans. So yeah, they're looking for a complete certificate of compliance.
Motion to issue the certificate of compliance?
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Frattoni? Aye. Any enforcement order updates?
Sorry, my mic was off. 12S, 34 Escal Road. So we did get a stormwater review from the applicant's engineer. This is the site over off of Route 20 where back in 2009, development had been permitted. They kind of rough graded a road and a large parking area, or what would have become a large parking area. And then the development stalled and never was completed. They had partially constructed some stormwater basins on the site. So basically what we had asked them to do, there was an incident of turbid runoff that affected a wetland. So that was what prompted the enforcement order, but we also asked them to take a look at basically conditions on the site as they were in 2009 to now, and whether those changes in condition meet the stormwater standards, because while they may not be intending to move forward with the project that was previously approved, the changes to the site have potentially impacted neighbors and the wetland resource areas. So they did provide an analysis of peak rates. So peak rates to 2 design points were shown to increase. For design point 1, they increased in the 10, 25, and 100-year storm. And design point 2, just the 100-year storm. And if we have the catchment map, yeah, so design point 1 is the wetland that's on the western side of the site. That was the wetland that received the impacts during the storm, where we saw turbidity essentially flowing through one of the stormwater basins. And then design point 2 is the, I'm blanking on the name of the condos up there. but there's a condo association, and there was a lot of concern from that neighborhood during the recent attempt to permit the CarMax facility at this location. So there were complaints that they've, seen increased rates of like flooding, just like stormwater runoff from this property in general. So, only the only increase to that was shown by the calcs was during the 100-year storm, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not more volume sheeting off the site in general. So one of our questions as a follow-up was whether any study of infiltration had been done in addition to the peak rates, because that's also an important piece of the puzzle in terms of stormwater compliance. And then also just questions about, do these partial basins actually really function as they're supposed to in terms of filtering? One of them is currently plugged to avoid continuous turbid flows to a wetland. So I think there's a number of things that will probably need to be done. And the commission's original enforcement order was A, related to the turbidity in the wetland, which is pretty much resolved at this point. But B, was to do this analysis and then file a notice of intent for any site alterations that were needed in order to bring the site back into compliance with the stormwater standards. So, while, again, they never did the development that they were planning to do, the site has changed from a largely vegetated natural site, not fully by any means, but to a very large flattened site with, compacted dirt, compacted gravel, which obviously has less ability to infiltrate. And it's essentially, now being used for various things like screening. I think currently there's it seems like there might be some utility company using it as a storage facility. So there's, the site was originally supposed to have catch basins that tied into detention basins, and the stormwater was supposed to follow this plan. But it really only, got halfway of the way there through the rough grading and alteration of the site. So we got this update. I've met with the engineers. The Amarello team, the property owner, has asked to meet on site to review this before proceeding with any proposed plan for improvements. My initial reaction to that was, I've been out to the site. I'm not sure if that's really necessary. It's been dragging on for quite a while, so, would also like to see progress in getting it resolved. That said, not totally opposed to it, but I just want to at least give the commission an update tonight and get the commission's thoughts on whether they see value in doing a spring site visit, or as soon as the snow melts, really, we could get out there for a site visit, or if you'd rather see the engineering team in the near future to discuss this further before any more time elapses. So I guess I'll turn it over to you guys. Don't have super strong opinions, I guess.
I guess, so what would be the purpose of you going back out to the site? We already know what the conditions are, and the question is, how do you bring the site into compliance for what it is?
Right.
Versus what it was supposed to be? If you think there's a value to the extra visit, that's fine, but otherwise I just want to know what their plans are to bring it into compliance.
Right. I think they wanted, again, this is coming from the ownership team.
Yeah, I mean,
How
unless
productive.
there's something, like there's a vision that can't be explained in a meeting.
Yeah.
Seems like just a delay tactic.
Right. Yeah, I think I could give that feedback to the engineering team and let them know that we'd
Yeah,
like to see it.
Unless you see benefits, like there's something you will learn distinctly different from what can be explained
Right,
or
yeah.
presented, then I would say, it's my
can't-
opinion.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I don't, I think, maybe a site visit later on in the process, once we have a better understanding of what they're looking to do, could be worthwhile. But yeah, I don't
Yeah, if there's
necessarily see.
an engineered plan to say this is what it is, now we go out and
Right.
see, okay, this will be here, that will be there, that makes sense, but.
Okay. All right, so the feedback I think I'll give is, it's been a while, we'd like to have a discussion about this before waiting for the snow to melt in
I'm sure
April.
it's not high value to them either to have the thing sitting as a parking lot for an occasional tenant. So I would imagine that there'd be a plan to develop or do something with it that's more,
And I think right now there's not. So when the CarMax proposal came forward, that would have kind of rendered this a moot point, because then they would have had a new
right, an actual.
stormwater design. I think now there's not a current plan to do
Right.
anything with it, so I think there's probably, a hesitation in terms of them wanting to do any
Oh, I
stormwater
understand, 'cause
infrastructure
something could
work
come
that
along,
doesn't
right?
profit
You're
for
going to
them,
design
but-
something and then hopefully design something else. But this is kind of sort of the nightmare that the Malden Street residents are concerned about.
Right.
Something gets started and then abandoned, and now you've got it's not vegetated, it's not used.
Right.
It's not contributing tax dollars. So,
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
I appreciate the direction on that.
is that it for enforcement?
That's it for enforcement,
Okay.
yep.
So open space?
Open space, so we have the Brooks Dairy Farm project that we're working on with CPA and land grant funding. One of the steps of this process will be granting a conservation restriction to Greater Worcester Land Trust. So we have a draft version of that for the commission's review in the Google Drive folder. So tonight, we're just looking for a commission vote to express support for granting the CR to Greater Worcester Land Trust in its current form. We might bring it back one more time if there are edits after EEA's review, but right now it's very similar to the CR that we granted for the St. George Forest project, almost identical.
And who's EEA?
That's the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. That's the state agency that reviews the
Got it.
conservation
Okay.
restrictions.
Got it.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Kenton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni, she sounds like she's losing her voice. Are you losing your voice?
Oh,
Active projects?
Nothing from staff this week.
Okay. We have minutes to approve?
Yep, so we have two sets of minutes. So the first one from December 15th, 2025, and the other one was January 5th, 2026.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Commissioner Kenton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
aye.
Commissioner Fatoni, aye. Approval of the 2027 meeting schedule. Do we get to object?
Yep, so we have the 2027 meeting schedule, year out to think about, but as you can see, here is the meeting schedule with the filing deadlines. This is worked around zoning board, who also shares Monday night meetings in this room, so, and holidays, Monday holidays.
Okay.
Motion to approve the meeting schedule?
Second.
Commissioner Kenton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni, aye. Budget approval.
Yes, so this is the FY27 WPA fund budget. As a reminder, the WPA fund is a fund that's kind of fed by the filing fees that we take in for projects under the Wetlands Protection Act. We are legally restricted to use this for things that are directly related to the administration of the act. Basically, every year, we kind of have a rolling $20,000 budget that we can allocate. We could request increases to that if we needed to, but we are typically well short of that balance. This funds things like specialized tools like augers and GPS units, and also trainings and conference attendance for commissioners. So this is pretty much unchanged since the last year. Slight increases in MACC dues. So again, just reserving budget for equipment if needed. But again, I think this year we've used around 2,000 of the 20,000 budgeted for FY '26, so we haven't really come close to
Are
maxing
we
it
able
out.
to use this for, I know we get a satellite series that the city subscribes to. If we wanted interim satellite photos, is this something that could be a place for that?
We could look into it. We would need to really be able to justify that it related to the commission's purview and the Wetlands Protection Act.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask is almost all the photos we get have like, they're not taken in the winter when the trees are bare and you can see some of the land features more clearly when the vegetation is not present.
Yeah.
So that's really just the thought, is that could you get a series of photos that were in those conditions as opposed to, I mean, it is helpful to see the trees for other reasons,
Right.
but
Yeah,
to see
we could-
beyond them is helpful.
We could look at potential options and see if it might work in terms of like appropriateness for WPA funds. We do get like March and April flyovers, which typically have leaf-off conditions.
Okay.
Once a year. It's not winter conditions, obviously. So my understanding is that they're like, at least near map, which is what we have our aerial imagery from. My understanding is that they don't do winter flyovers because snow cover can just make a lot of aerial imagery not worth it.
Okay.
But we can certainly look into whatever options are there. And again, we can always adjust this budget as we go. But it's this time of year that we start submitting budget items for review as far as the overall FY27 budget for the city. So we wanted to get this in around the same time. But yeah, we can look into that as an option. And as far as like Wetland Protection Act applicability, are you thinking
Just thinking
like-
of, in terms of what we have, well, at least what we have as commissioners available in the public domain to look at versus what you can present, like to show changes in an environment, but to, have fully leaf, no leaves, no cover, to be able to see, I suppose if there's snow cover, there's an issue, but just to be able to see water features in a way that you can't when the trees are covering a stream or covering you can kind of, estimate that something is there, but, I mean, I guess it's certainly not critical to anything we're doing. It's just more of a tool. And since you mentioned tools, that's just what I thought of.
Yeah, I mean, we can also try and see, I know our near map licenses are kind of tied to our like employee accounts, but we could see if there's options to get similar types of tools for you guys, because obviously it would be helpful for you too in your review.
Okay, all right.
As an alternative or as another option, can we look at drone photography?
You mean like,
Well, if you have a specific thing, let's say an enforcement order you want a more detailed shot of, or winter shots. Typically, satellite is not always real time, whereas drone is.
I think like the idea of drones might push us into uncomfortable territory on surveillance.
Okay.
But, I mean, we can look into that further as well. I know even satellite imagery raises concerns about surveillance sometimes, so I'm not sure.
Licensing and FAA compliance and all that stuff too.
Well, not necessarily us, but
Yeah, a license.
contracting with a third party to do that has all the established equipment and licenses and knows all regulations. I mean, that would be something, yes, that probably would be gone through the legal department to clear, but, it's an option to look at.
Could look into that as well. I think just initial reaction is it feels like something that would be difficult to pursue, but we can take a look at the option.
Yeah, well, I mean.
We've all read 1984, I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, to the commissioner's point too, I mean, there's conservation land. We're not talking necessarily about encroaching on private property, but there's land that's under our jurisdiction that's impossible for us to be able to get out and see on any kind of regular basis. So there would be an advantage potentially of somebody doing it. I know we had Davey Tree do a tree survey of the, of the properties, and that's certainly helpful, but, I mean, the technology exists for us to have a better view.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
yeah. definitely. And I agree on that principle, but just as far as the WPA fund, that would actually be an example of something that's not eligible. So our land stewardship duties are under the commission's purview, but not under the WPA purview. So it really has to be tied to, enforcement or permit review or something along those lines.
Okay. So we could use it in conservation land that has wetlands in it.
If, only really in the review role of the commission. Like, I don't even think we could use it for like a project that we wanted to permit, or like even like a restoration of a wetland. It's, so the whole idea behind the city or municipalities in general, so when somebody files an NOI with us and DEP, the filing fee under the Wetlands Protection Act essentially gets split, and half of it goes to the city and half of it goes to DEP. And the idea behind it is that, this state law administered at the local level is supposed to be funded to some degree by these filing fees that people are paying. So in some towns, they pay agent salary out of these funds. So the purpose of it is really just supposed to be like allowing the commission to do their function under the act.
And regulate the WPA.
Right.
Okay.
It would be nice to be able to tap it for land management, because we have no real other land
land
management
management
budget.
fund?
So, yeah, there is like a conservation fund, that's also something that can be established, but that's a whole different thing that would need revenue from other places as well.
Okay. So is there a motion to?
Yes, sorry. Motion to approve the budget?
Second.
Commissioner Canton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Frattoni? Aye. Update to the Wetlands Protection Ordinance and Regulations.
All right, so we finally have the red line draft prepared for you guys. Just a quick bullet point, high-level summary on the screen. And I had sent this out by email as well individually a little while back. But essentially, the main changes are adding climate resilience as a protected wetland value, so that adds on to things like groundwater protection, wildlife habitat, prevention of flood damage, the other interests that are protected under the Act and Ordinance. Addition of isolated vegetated wetland as a jurisdictional resource area. We don't get a ton of these. The Morgan Street project is actually a good example of the presence of IVWs. They weren't proposing to alter that at all, but that large wetland on the east side of the site was an isolated vegetated wetland. So in theory, they could have proposed filling that whole thing and building on top of it. So it's nice that in that particular case, they didn't propose that, but adding isolated vegetated wetlands is something we've been thinking about for a while. It's something that most other municipalities are doing at this point, even larger ones like Boston, Lawrence, a lot of neighboring ones like Shrewsbury. I don't have the list in front of me, but a lot of other communities are adopting that at this point. We're proposing a 1,000 square foot threshold. It's kind of important to have some sort of size threshold, because otherwise you could end up with an isolated wetland, like in a fallen tree trunk hole or something. So, making sure that it's like worth our time and effort, but also recognizing that isolated wetlands do play a valuable role from, the same purposes and values that other wetlands do. And then recognizing some of the exemptions that we talked about, so the utility maintenance exemption. And then rather than do a blanket adoption of other WPA exemptions, we suggested revising the ordinance to allow the commission to adopt other Wetlands Protection Act exemptions by regulation. So right now, the ordinance does not allow the commission to adopt any exemptions for work within wetland resource areas or the 100-foot buffer zone through regulation. So the commission could exempt certain categories of work from regulation under the stormwater protection zone, but not for wetland resource areas or the associated buffer zone. So the reason we didn't, and I think the example we've talked most about is the minor buffer zone activities. So things like, replacing a deck 50 feet away from the wetland on a residential property, replacing a utility pole in the buffer zone, like things like that. What we didn't want to do was just blanket adopt them, because some of them don't actually comply with other parts of our regulations. So fencing, for example, is a minor buffer zone activity that doesn't have a regulated setback under the Wetlands Protection Act. So if we adopted that, somebody could theoretically put a fence within the 15-foot buffer zone, which obviously wouldn't jive with our regulations. So rather than adopting everything in the ordinance, allowing the commission to adopt things through the regulations, we can then set like a minor buffer zone exemption category of our own in the regulations that we can adopt and adjust over time as the WPA regulations continue to evolve without having to go back to city council to make that happen. So it's not giving the commission to exempt things that are not exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act. Under home rule, this ordinance has to be more restrictive than the state regulations, so we obviously can't go and just say, well, this is regulated under the act, but we're not going to regulate it under the ordinance. It would really just be adopting specific provisions. And we're expecting some regulatory changes in the Wetlands Protection Act. There's, a draft set of regulation changes that have been in draft form for quite a while now. Supposedly, they're coming this spring. We'll see. And then there's also the Mass Ready Act, which more significantly changes some components of the Wetlands Protection Act in regards to permit streamlining for ecological restoration projects and priority housing projects. So it also gives us the chance to review any new exemptions under the WPA before just saying, all are accepted under the ordinance. So with that, we would plan to also draft a kind of companion regulation update to accompany this ordinance update, so that we can also, show City Council what we intend to update in the regs alongside the ordinance update, which obviously they have to approve themselves. Other changes, removing the slope trigger for SPZ only filings. So currently, the trigger for an NOI for sites within catch basin buffer is 10,000 square feet for sites without slopes steeper than 15%, or 5,000 square feet for sites with slopes steeper than 15%. We're not seeing a ton of value in regulating that 5 to 10,000 square foot of ground disturbance threshold site. Most of the time those are single-family homes that don't really necessarily need Conservation Commission review. Typically, they're also getting site plan review anyway, because alteration of slopes greater than 15% also triggers that filing. So really trying to just remove some of the redundancy in permitting, and then just keep it at a flat 10,000 square foot, which is, even that can bring in some relatively small projects to the commission's review, but I think it's a good step in just trying to make a kind of easy to interpret and consistently enforced type of policy. Adjusting timelines to align with the Wetlands Protection Act. So there's a lot of timelines in the ordinance that are just like longer than we actually have legal ability to do. Like, I think we're, under the ordinance, it says we have 35 days to issue an order of conditions after closing the hearing, and under the Wetlands Protection Act, we only have 21. So obviously we have to do the 21 regardless, so it's just updating those to align with the state regs. We never have really issues doing that anyway. We typically, issue orders of conditions within a week after the meeting. So just kind of modernizing that, but again, it also gives, a consistent and streamlined approach for applicants too, and assurance that their process will be timely. And then lastly, just clarifying the card areas that are exempted from filing for SPZ only projects. So this is a map of the card areas in the city. This is something we probably don't talk about too much in meetings because these projects never come in front of us. But essentially, the ordinance exempts SPZ only filings in these areas that were at one point in time deemed to be, CARD stands for Commercial Area Revitalization District. So there was at some point a push to kind of streamline permitting in these areas and make development easier. They follow urban corridors for the most part, like Lincoln Street, Canal District, Downtown Core, South Worcester. So there's all these different card areas. The ordinance technically only references the downtown card, even though over the past couple decades it's been widely applied to all card districts. So we've gone back and forth a little bit about it in terms of what we wanted to recommend. I think at this point we're just recommending striking the word downtown so that it just applies to all card areas, and we just continue to, administer it the way we've been doing for years. We did also talk about like scrapping it or really just limiting it to the downtown area. I think ultimately, the goals that we had for this ordinance update were kind of get that initial incorporation of resilience through the IVWs and the addition of the wetland value, and also streamline permitting for minor projects. And so I don't think we want to necessarily add, if we were to scrap this, then all these projects in these areas would then need to come in for review. So that would be in some ways kind of backtracking from the purpose of trying to streamline things. So open to discussion if the commission has, feelings on this one way or another, but that our recommendation is just to basically essentially codify it to be business as usual, yeah. And again, most of the projects that are filing in these areas they're typically, big commercial projects or commercial projects that also have to go through site plan review. So again, there's this kind of duplicative review that's happening, and we look at similar things. Obviously the boards have different purviews, but, stormwater and erosion control, like those do get looked at under both boards' reviews. And we've talked a bit about, maybe someday trying to more concretely separate planning board and Concom filings to remove duplication. But for now, I think leaving this, kind of in place and codifying it serves that purpose, at least for these areas.
So with this, I know you said there's a site plan review, but is there also just sort of a blanket, like any work in this area, you'll have to have, silt sacks or, at your storm drains? Is there just sort of a?
So we don't have like a set of like citywide BMP requirements necessarily. Those are things that planning board would look for in their filing. Like they would want to see the same type of stuff that we typically look for. They look at it in a little less detail. But it's also, all within our office, and we collaborate frequently on projects and give each other feedback. So for the CARD areas that are outside of the combined sewer area, so if it's a surface system catch basin, we still retain enforcement capabilities on all of these areas. So even if a project is in CARD and doesn't need to file with us, if they have a total failure of erosion control and impact a catch basin in the street, we can then either require them to file retroactively or take enforcement action and require like remediation and new steps there. And there have been cases where, some projects where we might not necessarily have jurisdiction up front, we've reached out and said, hey, this looks bad, like you guys need to correct this or you're at risk of enforcement action. So there's no like citywide defined, you should do this for this type of project. Actually, I guess there is in the zoning ordinance, there are erosion control provisions. Again, that's a little bit outside of my area of expertise, but there are some erosion control provisions that ISD could enforce. I don't think it gets down to the specifics of like silt sacks or types of perimeter controls, but it does, like you are responsible for keeping sediment on your site. So yeah, we don't need a vote or anything on this tonight. Just wanted to give you guys an update and see if there was anything like glaring or missing or things you felt you didn't agree with or wanted to see changed. Our next move over the next couple of months would be to draft that accompanying regulation update, similarly redlined, just to kind of show what we would do subsequent to the adoption of these in order to adopt those like WPA exemptions and stuff like that. I think it'll be a good time also for us to look at the regulations and think about what we think might need changing or clarification. I think like the riprap,
In the 30-foot.
endless riprap debate today we had is a good example of where we might be able to more clearly define like what components of stormwater infrastructure are we okay with in these buffer zones, and what are we, like, structure could be a little more clearly defined. If we mean hardscape, we should say hardscape and not just like sidewalk or building or whatever. So it's an opportunity for, adjust that for the first time in a while. So, we'll try to incorporate these things we've talked about, but we'll also try and see where there's opportunity for just kind of common sense improvements that could make life easier. But are there any thoughts on the ordinance changes so far that we have on the screen?
I think it does a good job of simplifying some things,
Yeah.
allowing them to move forward that we weren't really adding a lot of value to.
The only other thing I would have liked to see is adding fines at a higher level, but, it's not there.
I do remember that feedback from one of the earlier discussions, actually, Stuart, and I do think there's a possibility that we could increase from 100 to 300 per violation, so that's another thing that I forgot to mention that we could potentially do through the ordinance update. I remember you had made that comment a while back. I know $300 still doesn't have a lot of teeth in the grand scope of these project budgets, but
I think that's the limit the state will let us.
yeah, so there's a couple of different procedures you can use for fining. There's like kind of a criminal court process, and right now in our ordinance, that's capped at 300. The one that we often use that you don't have to take people to court straight away is the non-criminal disposition procedure, and that is set forth in state law. So the reason I was just saying I think we might actually be able to increase that is because I looked at that state law, and it looks like the cap is 300 at the state level, so I think theoretically we could amend the ordinance to bump that up to match that, but would need to double check that and also coordinate with law. I know there's a desire in our department as well to potentially see that increased, just to have a little more teeth behind the fines that we have. We don't have a lot, but it would require, so the fine cap exists both in the Wetlands Protection Ordinance and then also in a separate section of the ordinance of the city that outlines the different things that fines can be issued for through that non-criminal disposition process. So there's a couple of places in the ordinance where that would need to be adjusted. So we'll need to look and see if it's gonna, ruffle feathers to amend things outside of just Chapter 6, which is the Wetlands Protection Ordinance, or if there's no opposition to that, then that's possible. But yes, the fines, I'm glad you mentioned that because that is something else that we looked into.
Thank you.
So you mentioned some of the wildlife impacts. Not sure if we ever get into how lighting affects, some of these areas, especially as, things start getting built closer and closer to the resource areas. If there are wildlife, limiting the amount of light that actually goes to the wetlands. Is that something that I know typically site plan reviews, they require, for big projects.
Right.
Require photometrics.
Yep. Yeah, so like you said, they definitely do require that in planning board review often, if not all the time. I think even without amending the regs, I think we could look at that component of work when it's within that 100-foot buffer zone. It's maybe like a little bit of a stretch under the act, just because wildlife habitat is typically associated with kind of quantified resource area impacts. So yeah, I guess maybe we could look at potentially adding something like that into the regs. I think in general, one of the ideas about adding climate resilience as a protected interest in the ordinance is that we could then start to think about regulations that, and this is kind of diverging a little bit from the wildlife question, but start looking at regulation updates that, can promote saving tree canopy as furthering climate resilience in both, heat island mitigation and also carbon sequestration and all the other ecosystem services that trees provide. So things along that line for wildlife habitat are also things we could look at since it is protected under the ordinance already.
Is there any funding or availability for doing some kind of research and studies? I appreciate, we may feel that there's a deleterious effect of lighting, but is there a quantifiable, qualifiable way or research out there to have the regulation have a scientific basis?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think we obviously want to make sure that we're implementing regulations that have scientific backing. I think when funding, no, not really at this time, I think, unless we could find some sort of grant out there that might fund that type of thing. What we've been doing so far is really just staff time and review of mostly other communities' regulations to see what other communities are doing. I mean, there's a lot of, especially with climate resilience, that's a big one, especially in coastal communities, but across the state, a lot of communities are adopting climate resilience as an interest and then kind of furthering that through regulation. Whether we can actually end up coming up with a specific set of regulations for lighting, I think, who knows, maybe, maybe not, depends what we can find in research. I think it's also something that we could just like start by asking applicants about when they come to present. I think oftentimes, I'm sure they would have some like dark sky compliant lighting that they would pitch as a.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of research out there just in general, but I think, we can address it, just in terms of how it would affect our jurisdiction, right? I mean, there's so much research out there about just general, outside of wetlands, just construction and,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just thinking that, I wonder if the way to incorporate it would be to make a reference in the ordinance regarding any kind of impairment without specifically saying light, because it could be light, sound, obviously material, pollution that affects a wetland, and maybe if we can't formulate like the regulations just yet, because we don't have hard science on it, the category of impairment could be there for us to hook on to when we have those things. Maybe impairment might be too vague a term to fly by the legal department.
So I don't think you'd necessarily need to make that type of definition in the ordinance. I think the fact that wildlife habitat is a protected value in the ordinance already is enough to then create performance standards in the regulations. So like, all of these things we have like wildlife habitat, protection of groundwater, all the things we typically look at. So that's what allows us to make the regulations like you need a 15-foot no disturb because it promotes these things. And so like all the performance standards that we have tie back into those interests in the protected resource areas. So I don't think you actually really need to change anything in the ordinance. We can just think more about how we want to define performance standards.
So I would think that, what we can find on lighting, what we can find on temperature, we know obviously temperature has a big effect on, wildlife in the water in terms of, some amphibians will stop breeding. And I think, and there is a lot out there. I mean, I've done some of this just in the context of activities around the lake, so I know there is a lot of research on wildlife and lighting, but I don't know if it's specific to wetland-based habitats as opposed to, migratory birds, which is a one that's commonly mentioned in research, so.
Yeah, and I just think of, there have been many times we go out there and there's like minnows in the water or, something like that too, that are migrating.
Yep.
So trying not to impact that flow.
So I think as we kind of continue to work on this update, I think commissioners should also feel free to like dig into things that you think are important to incorporate, and we can keep this like running update thing on the agenda and, not necessarily have something to discuss every meeting, but have a place for it if there are things that, you've looked into. And obviously we don't expect you guys to like carry the load on this since you're volunteers and have other full-time jobs, but, any like thoughts or contributions that you want to bring, we certainly like welcome. We don't want to make it just like a staff dictating what we think it should be without your input or contribution. So Yeah, happy to, take direction in terms of what you guys are thinking about, but also happy to like entertain suggestions or research or ideas that you have as we go.
I have something I'd like to see. I agree that there's probably a lot of research out there on this subject or tangential components of the subject. Is there any way for us to partner with one of the many universities in this great Commonwealth and present it to the educators and see if they can, do a targeted study, probably for a grade or something like that, or a master's or PhD thesis, something along those lines? Is there any way for us to get a ball rolling like that?
Yes, and we have tried specifically with the Wetlands Protection Act, or Wetlands Protection Ordinance, rather. We've tried, there's like a urban environmental policy program through Tufts that we had submitted that as an idea to. We partner regularly with a lot of Worcester universities on different types of projects. I think it's hard. So, I mean, the attempts that we have made haven't really been fruitful in terms of like getting policy research and analysis on the ordinance update. It wasn't selected the few times that we submitted that as a project proposal. It's tricky too, because you have to kind of match it with the right student level. So a lot of the partnership opportunities we do have are with like local university freshman classes. And sometimes like that level of a deep dive on policy doesn't fit very well with the like academic level that they're currently at. And it's also not like the most exciting project, I think. There's a lot of like cool, hip, environmental type of projects.
It's not sexy enough.
Right, like the Worcester Wetlands Protection Ordinance update isn't like the most exciting thing in the world necessarily, but we do regularly try to engage with universities and, specifically have tried to push this as a thing for people to look into. It's just not always easy to find, a perfect fit for what we're looking for and what they're looking for, but we certainly, value student and professors' time that they're willing to commit to efforts that the city is working on. So we'll always, continue to explore those opportunities and pursue them where there's good fits. But, we have tried for the ordinance update before and haven't been super successful.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's get off this subject so Lindsay can get some sleep. Have some chicken soup and get some sleep.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Is that it?
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Feel
Good night,
better.
everyone.
Good night.
Get better.